There we go.
And there go the first
There
series
goes the
of
cover
parachutes.
with its chutes.
And we're on drogues.
And Houston, we're visual 2 drogues out the window.
2 good drogue
Each of those
shoots.
Coming up on the mains.
Next up,
each about 23 feet, 7 meters in diameter.
next up, the deployment of pilot parachutes that will pull the main chutes out. Time to splash down 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
Amazing imagery here.
Yep. Spacecraft still at quite the
Perfect
speed, but
descent
it will
rate
be slowing
according to
down.
flight dynamics.
Good rate on 2 drogues.
We see the same on board.
You can see it's well below the tracking plane.
Yes, it will be going down to a speed of 19 miles per hour at touchdown.
Passing through
or at
10,000 feet. Still on drogues.
Yeah, the mains separate about 6,000, 5,000 feet in altitude.
Yeah, you don't want them
Coming
out
up soon.
Don't want them out too early. They can break. There we go.
There's
There
the
we go.
cut. There's the deployment of the mains.
Main chute deploy.
It'll take a minute to
We're
fully
at 5,000 feet.
inflate. There we go. All 3 looking good.
Search and
Briefing in
recovery beacon has been
progress.
activated on integrity.
There we go.
And we have 3 good main
Beautiful.
chutes. Good 3 main chutes, good reefing,
Houston
good
Coast
descent
Guard,
rate.
Good rates, and we see 3 good-looking parachutes.
Those are each 116 feet or 35 meters in diameter.
They're huge.
265 feet or 80 meters long, and each one weighs
Integrity. Cabin
300
pressure
pounds.
indicates no need for hydrazine checks.
Integrity captain.
Good, that's no leaking hypergolic fuels.
This is a
That's good.
perfect descent for integrity. Its crew sounding hale and hearty on board. Time to splash down 1 minute, 15 seconds.
I can tell you friends of the crew have been messaging me saying they were holding their breath for that blackout moment. We all knew it was coming, but there's something very disheartening to know that your friends are on board there waiting for that moment for
Integrity about to
reconnection and
complete
when
a
they
journey
heard them.
spanning
Wow.
481 miles from its launch from the Kennedy Space Center back on April 1st, and a trip around the moon.
It's about 1,117,659 kilometers if you use metric.
Again, those
Had
3
that
main
number already.
parachutes helping to slow the spacecraft down. It's still going to be a bit of a jolt to the crew on the actual splashdown itself. Oh, you can see some of the
I love
burning
that.
off there of
Yeah.
those hypergolics, it looks like. Totally fine.
As expected.
Passing
Exactly.
through 1,000 feet.
Approximately 15 seconds to splashdown. It's going to feel a bit like getting into a car accident, but considering that they were just 13 minutes ago traveling at 24,000 miles per hour, this is quite impressive. And again, as we said, that time in the top left was estimated. It obviously varies depending on exact reentry profile, the winds,
Yep.
and all of that.
Closing in now. Let's see that splashdown.
Houston Integrity splashdown, sending post-landing
Here we
command
go.
now.
Splashdown confirmed.
Copy splashdown. Waiting on VLDR.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time. From the pages of Jules Verne to a modern-day mission to the moon, a new chapter of the exploration of our celestial neighbor is complete. Integrity's astronauts back on Earth.
Excellent. Absolutely amazing.
As you pointed out, almost 700,000 miles, almost 1.2
And the landing
million
and support
kilometers.
officer reports the vehicle is stable 1. We still will be deploying the crew module uprighting system to maintain that orientation. A perfect bullseye splashdown for Integrity and its 4 astronauts.
Stable 1 means the capsule is upright.
Obviously, it's going to take a moment. They're not going rushing in too quickly. to recover the crew. They've got to give it a little bit of time to settle.
It is, as you pointed out, going to take a couple of minutes. You saw some of that hypergolic propellants and things venting out, clearing out all of the lines. Of course, they want to make sure that is all safe. You will see the giant balloons start to inflate, as they were talking about, which is part of the crew uprighting system. So that way they are in stable 1, meaning
The
that the capsule is
unofficial
upright.
splashdown time, 7:07 and 47 seconds p.m. Central Time. We'll get that refined for you. That would put the end of the mission at a mission elapsed time of 9 days, 1 hour, 31 minutes, 35 seconds.
So a little less than what they were originally guesstimating.
And
think
we're
earlier they were
configuring
saying
for very low
57.
data rate.
Obviously
You can
getting
see some
live
of the other
feeds from
shoots,
the-
it looks like over
occurring
there.
In the Pacific, southwest of San Diego, at 7:07 and 47 seconds p.m.
Integrity Houston,
Yes.
com check on VLDR.
That's what I was waiting for, that view from the
Houston, we have you
USS
loud and clear on
John
VLDR.
Murtagh.
How else?
We have you the same. We'll meet you over in post landing.
There we go.
And with
Perfect
that, they are no
communications
longer using
established.
A journey. We are stable 1, 4 green crew members.
Houston, copy.
Reed Wiseman reporting 4 green crew members. That is not their complexion. That is the fact that they're in great condition. That's what that means.
We'll
So
see
might be
after
their
an hour of
complexion.
floating.
Upright, the crew module uprighting system is being deployed. The 5 airbags being inflated through helium to maintain the upright configuration for the vehicle. This was a textbook entry and a textbook touchdown for Integrity. Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen back on Earth after a journey around the moon.
Some of the other parachute systems still coming back down.
There you go, and you can see
But
those
then you can see there.
the orange inflatables up at the top. As pointed out, stable 1 means the crew is upright, but this is in case something happens or a wave hits or whatever to help keep them upright. If they landed sideways or upside down, these would have inflated and righted the capsule.
Yep. There was another view, much wider view, where you could see like all of the other chutes, like you could see like the drow chutes and things like that. This is why I mentioned earlier that they wait a few minutes for all of those other pieces of hardware that they deploy to sort of either get already in the water or sort of, you know, make sure that they're not going to be in the way when they go out to the crew.
We continue
Yes, and the
to
VL
monitor the functioning of the CMOOS system. The airbags are being inflated to maintain a stable 1 or upright configuration. There's a good view from one of the naval helicopters hovering overhead. Reed Wiseman reporting 4 green crew members, meaning they're all in excellent shape.
I'm sure after an hour of floating and bobbing in the water, maybe they will be green.
They will be
but
green, yeah.
Amazing. The crew back on Earth, hopefully the first of many splashdowns from around the
10-4,
moon
SAR beacon and
in
radio.
the years to come.
So we are expecting divers to go and meet
Our
the capsule
beacon
as well.
is in 406, and we're powering the radio now. Go ahead.
We see the beacon on. However, the recovery team is not seeing the signal. Your SAR radio uses the same antenna, so you may run into trouble with the radio.
Okay, copy. And we are also powering up the sat phone now.
Good call.
I wonder if they'll do prank calls with that phone.
SAR, by the way, search and rescue. So that was if they were way off course to be able to find them, and additional ways to also be able to communicate with the recovery forces. If
Yeah, I was
not
mentioning
through
the prank calls because
communications
they
here.
did that on demo 2. Bob and Dog. That was hilarious.
Yeah. But yep, so again, those helicopters will eventually go out there and grab the crew. But right now, as you pointed out there, Alice, they will have the initial divers come out and be the first ones to greet the crew as they wait for the vehicle and everything to be safed, and again, for that crew to actually get out there and do the initial checkouts on the capsule and the crew. So far, so good. Unbelievable. I'm sorry, I'm still at a loss for words now as we see them bobbing in the water there.
It's definitely a good thing. This is everything that they hoped for and more, to see this go as well as it has. I'm sure the
And as long
crew,
as we have views, we will be staying live through the crew actually being taken out of the capsule and brought back.
yeah, and they will obviously go for medical checkups. That's expected. Certainly what every crew does when they egress.
Exactly. And with the crew safely back down, we now have brand new merch just released
Love
celebrating the crew's safe return.
We copy.
Oh, I love that new the one on the mug and everything, and this gorgeous one. Available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com now. There it is. Look at that. Oh, I love that one personally. They're both really cool. But to show the actual splashdown on the left, and again, there's the real thing on the right. They look pretty darn close. Apollo to Artemis, a new era begins. All available now. I think now we can finally say mission success.
it. Absolutely.
Wow. Again, you see those orange inflatables at the top. That's expected.
Just
Capsule
wanted to
expected to
blend
stay
in with
upright,
the,
though. You could see very calm waters.
I was going to say, they just wanted to blend in with the suits that they're wearing. I feel like orange is the color of this mission.
Yeah, again, the vessels nearby is the USS John P.
Weekend
Murta.
broken.
Integrity, Houston did not call.
Few
Copy that,
comms
Houston.
issues.
It might have been on the SAR radio. Stand by.
Again, that search and rescue radio that they're talking about.
All of the milestones were executed in perfect fashion.
And you see them bobbing there, safely home. But yes, the USS John P. Murta is nearby. We had those helicopters with some of the visuals there.
They
We'll
obviously
have the
couldn't be
dive
too
team.
close, could they? It's what, a 5-mile radius they were expected to be to the splashdown zone, so they're having to maneuver to be a little bit closer for that recovery mission.
Yep, that was 5 miles out. And yes, so the crew of those first 4 divers will be out there to go
We
grab
are.
them. There's the boat behind it, I believe.
Looks like it, doesn't it? We're expecting those divers to arrive first to check the capsule before they open it. That crew will then come out onto those boats and then get recovered by the helicopters from the Helicopter Sea Combat Squadron 23 team.
Exactly. And the first 4 people that will be out there will be with the U.S. Navy. That's Lieutenant Commander Jesse Wang, Senior Chief Hospital Corpsman Laddie Aldridge, Chief Hospital Corpsman Vlad Link, and Hospital Corpsman First Class Steve Capula. That is the dive medical team that will be the first ones to open the Orion capsule once the crew does go out there. So they will first then do their medical assessments of the crew, help them out of the capsule, and then get them towards one of the helicopters that will be aboard to grab them up. In terms of order, I believe it is going to be Christina,
All
who
right,
is
Jack,
closest to the hatch.
selected T/D+30. No joy on SAR radio or sat phone. And stand by, we have the master diver on SAR radio. Please hold comms. Hey,
There we
Lily. Excuse me. Hey, Jackie. We just got the master diver on the Star.
Lily being the lead
And
recovery operations.
I was going to say, and a bird just randomly flying by. Amazing.
Yep.
Great
Again,
views.
There we go.
There's one of the. Yep, the fast boats is what SpaceX calls them. It's, I guess, similar here.
You
The
are happy
first
with
cruise
your
go
comm
up.
with Master Diver. You can go back to the 15-minute power down.
Okay, stand by. Yeah, we'll confirm here in a second.
The crew on board Integrity coordinating with the flight control team in Houston here in Mission Control.
Working out all of the ways to recover them and everything, and it's amazing after all this time of they're talking on tracking data relay satellites, then they're on the Deep Space Network. Now they're just back on regular old terrestrial radio.
And they're obviously doing some observations at this moment, making sure that the capsule's looking the way it's supposed to. It's a slow approach. This is all expected and part of their plan for the recovery mission.
So did everyone on Earth get their gorilla or ape costumes to surprise the crew when they came back?
You gotta wonder. I don't know how well that will go with the dive crew.
Concur. We haven't had anything come through.
Yep, there's going to be the boat coming up to the crew. As mentioned, the 4 medical team members are going to be the first ones out there. And then eventually we'll have the helicopters that will be there.
But it does not appear as though they are hearing us.
Still a few of those comms issues. Hey, look, that's the worst
Houston
that's going on
and
right
Reed,
now.
just to confirm, you are pushing the PTT on the radio.
Making sure they're pressing the push to talk.
Why are you pushing the right one? There's a lot of different ones on that console. Wouldn't be the end of the world if they didn't. Again, they're in that
So as we
inspection
continue
time.
to sort out the communications between Integrity and the recovery teams, we are standing by for the initiation of the power down procedures that, as you see, the recovery teams are moving towards the side of the capsule. The next major event will be the erection of that large inflatable raft called the front porch.
Yep, that is the nickname for it. You can probably, if you've seen the Apollo missions with that little inflatable thing around the capsule when they get out, that's basically along those lines. So if you remember it from the Apollo days, even from the
Houston,
Gemini
for
days.
sat phone, we are going to attempt to call you.
Good idea, standing by. Yes,
Boy, you can get
we are
delivery anywhere.
pushing the push to talk, the 2 buttons on the left side of the radio below the up-down arrows. We are utilizing them. I'm rebooting the radio to see if we get good comms.
Okay, we copy all, and just to confirm, you are seeing that you're touchdown plus 3030 for power, correct?
That's affirmative.
Helicopters coming into view there, as well as those rescue boats.
Yeah, it went from nobody nearby to everyone all at once. Yes, so they were using the satellite phone that they have instead. After all that talk about using a terrestrial radio, now they're going to sat phones. But this to be able to communicate with those teams, letting them know about approaching, getting the hatch open. Which a reminder, the hatch on the side of that capsule has not been opened in over 9 days. The last time that that hatch was open, it was later closed by the closeout crew at Launch Complex 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And now it will be opened in the Pacific Ocean after a 700,000-mile journey.
In their defense with the communications issues, if anyone's ever been out at sea at that kind of distance, it's spotty at best. So it's not surprising they're having issues with the terrestrial communications services as they are. And again, if that's the worst thing that they're having to deal with right now, we'll take it.
Exactly. At least it's not Microsoft Outlook trying to sync.
An explosive toilet. There we go. It's
Please
as
don't
close as we've got
reply.
so far.
NRD, very weak, but readable. Master diver, we can hear, but they cannot hear us.
It sounds like the divers are there already.
Well, they're still trying to get in contact with them with these different modes of communication, and it sounds like right now it's still just a one-way communication. And this is all part of the test flight.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the actual launch portion itself, it's also the recovery assets, because the last time they recovered Artemis 1, there was mannequins on board, or moonikins, as they called them, not actual human beings. And of course, this is being able to talk with them one-on-one to get them all set up to approach the capsule. And then, of course, once they are there, the medical teams will speak with each of the individual astronauts
And Houston,
as well.
on OE1, is there any chance to tie us into NRD?
Checking.
I did see someone ask, why don't they just route it through Houston? Well,
They are.
sounds like that's what they're going to try. Amazing just to see the number of vessels and
This is Mission
helicopters
Control,
and everything
Houston.
out there.
While we stand by for the establishment of communications between Integrity and the recovery team that is basically standing by very close to the spacecraft, we're going to go to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha, where Megan Cruz is standing by with Administrator Jared Isaacman.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Hey, Rob, yeah, just such an
Anyway.
honor to be able to be here on the ship, to be able to share and experience this moment with everyone together. And of course, as you just said, yes, here with NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman. Administrator, how did you feel getting to witness this and seeing NASA at its best?
Oh, I mean, I'm honestly, I'm still at a loss for words. I mean, you know, like the childhood Jared right now can't believe what I just saw. I mean, almost been waiting my whole lifetime to see this, and then it's NASA Administrator. I just couldn't be more proud of the entire workforce, the years, the effort, the late nights, all the hard work from across the country that contributed to this incredible moment right now. And yeah, incredibly grateful too for our teams here on the John P. Murtha right now.
Yeah, look at them behind us
We
here.
got everybody. Hey, what do you guys think? We just brought some astronauts back from the moon, huh?
While he's wearing his astronaut jacket himself.
Unbelievable. Thank you. Yeah, so grateful to the Navy, the sailors that are here, the NASA teams. I mean, this is a joint effort that's on their way right now. These recovery forces are getting out to our Orion spacecraft, to Integrity, to get our astronauts back on the ship safely.
Yeah, and this is not just an accomplishment for NASA. This is an accomplishment for humanity. Again, a historic mission to the moon and back. How does this make you feel, and what do you hope people take away from this?
Well, I'll tell you, I think about the crew members that we've all had an opportunity to observe over the last 10 days, right? I mean, they're absolutely professional astronauts. I mean, wonderful communicators, almost poets. But then I think these were the ambassadors from humanity to the stars that we sent out there right now. And I can't imagine a better crew than the Artemis II crew that just completed a perfect mission right now. So yes, it's a huge moment for everybody, right? I mean, we are back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon, bringing them back safely, and to set up for a series more. I mean, this is not a once in a lifetime, which you hear sometimes around here. It's like, this was a once in a lifetime. No, it's not. This is just the beginning. We are going to get back into doing this with frequency, sending missions to the moon until we land on it in 2028 and start building our base.
Yeah, are we going to build on the momentum for Artemis 3? I mean, it's just around the corner.
Absolutely. So I mean, that's part of me too. Like I can't wait to get the crew off of Integrity right now, but also getting Integrity back on this ship so we can start taking a look at it, because all that data is so precious to us right now. I mean, we are going to definitely want to take a good look at the thermal protection system. We're going to want to download all the data they couldn't transmit back to us and use that to inform Artemis 3. But we're already making progress, right? You had SRB segments already showing up at KSC. Core stage for Artemis 3 is rolling out on April 20th. We're getting Mobile Launcher 1 back in vehicle assembly building. So yes, there is a lot to celebrate right now on a mission well accomplished for Artemis 2, and at the same time, we got to start getting ready for 3.
Amazing. And last question, for people who joined us for all 10 days to see what we can accomplish together with our international partners, what do you think about the fact that we're going to keep doing this more and more and more?
It's incredibly exciting. I mean, yes, it's the contributions, like the best and brightest across the NASA workforce from across the country, our industry partners, our international partners. We had a Canadian Space Agency astronaut on board in Jeremy. We had the European Service Module. And you think, in the days leading up to this launch, I mean, 48 hours prior to launching Artemis 2, I was meeting with the Italian Space Agency. We signed a memorandum of understanding to build a habitation module on the moon. I mean, you have countries, all of our allies and partners coming together saying, we are committed to this effort. We are returning to the moon. We're doing it to stay. We are building that enduring presence. We are going to master the skills on the surface of the moon so someday we can undertake missions to Mars. It's just an incredibly exciting time, and we're not going at it alone. We're bringing everybody along with us.
Absolutely. And speaking of everyone, one more time, we're going to ask the crew here, you guys ready to land on the moon? Awesome. I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Administrator. Appreciate you being here. We're, of course, going to stay on to watch the crew get extracted from Orion, so stay tuned, and we'll see you back here shortly.
Okay,
we have an interview with NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, who was out on the recovery vessel there. Well traveled, both being at the launch and then in mission control for much of the mission, and now on the recovery vessel.
We say we weren't going to go to them, and then we realized it was Jared Isaacman. We had to listen to the NASA administrator and what he wanted to share with us.
And so now we continue to wait for the crew to be extracted. Last we heard, they were having those issues with communicating with the dive team there, and the master diver specifically, using their search and rescue radios, trying through sat phones, trying to route the communications. So we will have to see when they're finally able to communicate with them so that they can actually go in there and grab the astronauts out of the capsule. Look at that view of Artemis in the water. It still doesn't feel real, but it is. It's real. That is actually a capsule that returned from around the moon in my lifetime with people on it.
That's a real pinch me moment, isn't it?
It is, and just compare it to the new merch that came out. I mean, it's identical. It's the same picture as the office beam goes. Look at that. But I mean, if you're just as hyped as we are about the mission finally coming to its conclusion, celebrating the return of Artemis 2 successfully, and hopefully the return of humanity's journeys to the moon again, you should check out the new merch, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Just released. You can see we've had it on mugs, we've had it on hoodies. Gorgeous designs. The shop team did an amazing job here with this. So celebrate the return of humanity to the moon and these 4 astronauts back down to Earth at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. So, Alex, I know you've been listening in. What's the latest that we're hearing so far right now?
Yeah, so as expected, the Orion spacecraft has been powered down as part of the plan, because it's basically like within 20 minutes after splashdown, it's supposed to power down. And officially, with that power down, Johnson Space Center has handed over the responsibility of Orion to the Exploration Ground Systems. But that doesn't mean that the flight director sort of just ups and go or anything like that. He's still out there at JC on console, and he will be on console until the crew departs the capsule. But that's basically, the official handover Orion from now on, it's part of the exploration ground systems, which for people that might not be aware, those are the ones that are in charge of the transportation of the of basically putting together the rocket, for example, before launch, of the ground systems. I mean, it's part of the name, I guess, but it also involves as well the recovery and the transport back to the Kennedy Space Center for all of the post-landing inspections.
Yep, so there's still plenty to do with this capsule now. It's not like, oh, it's back, it's done. There's a lot of inspections to do. Of course, we're going to want to see how that heat shield looks after re-entry. And then
for Artemis 1, they had a sort of like a little media day when they arrived with the capsule. I hope they have something like that. We had that with, I remember Jack went out there to California, to San Diego, and he was actually able to spot the little sort of spillations on that heat shield back when Artemis 1. So we'll see if we get a view of that when that happens. It should happen within a few days.
Yeah, that would be amazing if we get to see the views again. And then, of course, they will continue to inspect it. It will make its way back to Florida, where the teams will look at everything on board the capsule. Of course, there are things that they will have to remove from inside Orion first. A lot of science experiments, things that are more on the time-sensitive side.
Trash.
Some of which will be thrown away, some of which will actually be analyzed post-launch, or post-landing, excuse me. So amazing. And again, you can see all the people there ready and waiting to hop over towards the Orion capsule and the crew of 4 on board Integrity. Amazing. 218 hours after launch, the crew now awaiting extraction, which, as pointed out, it will be the medical team that will be out there with them as part of the U.S. Navy Fleet Forces Command. So again, that will be Lieutenant Commander Jesse Wang, Senior Chief Hospital Corpsman Laddie Aldridge, Chief Hospital Corpsman Vlad Link, and Hospital Corpsman First Class Steve Capalla. They are the dive medical team that will be the first ones to open up the capsule now after splashdown. And if all goes to plan, in terms of who they will talk to, check out, and then the extraction plan will be starting off with Christina Cook, who is MS-1 closest to the hatch, then Victor Glover, who is the pilot. That will be followed by Mission Specialist 2 and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. And then, of course, the last one to leave the ship is the captain, or in this case, Commander Reed Weissman. There'll be 2 different helicopters to return the 4 crew members to the deck of the John F. Murtaugh, which is just a couple miles away from where they are right now and closing.
It's great to see those MH-60S Seahawk helicopters as well that keep coming through on the screen. They will obviously be extracting the crew from that, what did they call it, the deck? The welcoming
the front
deck?
porch.
The front porch, there you go. When they are out of the capsule.
Yep.
Front porch. Does it come with a rocker as well? Oh, look. Supplied by the seabed, obviously.
Yep. Again, I can imagine the moment when they were able to open up the capsule, open up the hatch, and smell the salt air for the first time after 9 days of being in very close proximity to the 4 communication, or of the words, to be within close proximity of the 4 astronauts, all in that tight space.
It's been a long and a very exciting coverage so far today, Sawyer. I think we can definitely excuse you from forgetting your words. I mean, there have been points during this entire mission where we've all got to that point where we've lost our thought process and been lost for words for how incredible this entire mission has been from start to finish. They really have done a very good job of executing Artemis 2, the entire mission.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's still hard to believe that the crew that we've been following for the last almost 10 days of our lives nonstop is back home. I'm very glad they've made it back safely too. And you can see all of those people ready and waiting to get to that capsule and get to those 4 astronauts. After a nearly 700,000 mile journey around the moon and back. Which I should point out for those who use metric, that is just under, it's a little over 1.1 million kilometers traveled.
1.1 million. That is crazy.
Hopefully the crew is able to communicate with those search and rescue teams.
I was going to say, we're seeing one of them approach it a little more, certainly moving around for observations. That's a good sign.
Starting to do circles there, yeah.
Fine. Good sign.
Hopefully finally able to approach the capsule soon. So yeah, as we heard there, they were having initial issues communicating with the master diver that will be part of the team to grab the crew out, or at least check on them first, get them onto that front porch, and then have the helicopters come and recover them. There we go. Still doing the circling. Of course, you've got all of the aerial units circling as well. And Alex, I think we now have the official splashdown time.
Yep, official splashdown time per the flight dynamics officer was 7:07 p.m. 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Eastern time. That will be 0007 27 UTC. That's 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes and 15 seconds after launch. I actually flipped my numbers here. I had written down 23. It's 32 minutes and 15 seconds. There you go.
Oopsie. Yeah, that's 8:07 p.m. 27 seconds Eastern time.
Yeah.
7:07 Central.
And it's very confusing when you get all these different time zones coming out, isn't it?
Oh yeah, sorry. I meant exactly 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Oh my goodness.
We're seeing that crew
too
approach
many
the
time
capsule.
zones.
Yeah.
8:07? What?
Yeah, 8:07, 27 p.m.
What?
Eastern, 0007, 27 UTC.
What?
There we go. We see the crew
8:07.
finally reaching the capsule. Or at least getting near it.
I'm sure at this point they're doing readings, they're checking, observing with their eyes, making sure that the crew are ready
No
for
correlation. No
that
correlation.
opening of the capsule.
None.
Yep, we want to make sure it's safe for everybody getting out, both the recovery teams as well as the actual astronauts themselves.
It's interesting because before Artemis 1, they still hadn't sort of narrowed down to a sort of like a path to how to recover the crew. Because today, the way that they're going to be doing it, we've talked about the front porch, right? That inflatable raft on the hatch of the capsule. And they'll be airlifted by the helicopters to the ship. But the other option that they were sort of trading off is sort of the way that we see, for example, SpaceX recover Crew Dragons, which is they lift first the capsule onto the ship, right? And then they help the crew get out. And so that was one of the options that they were sort of debating. For Artemis 2, they decided to do this, but I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, for longer missions, that will be the case. Apollo did a very similar thing where the lunar missions, they had the airlifting, but for Skylab missions, for example, they brought the ship first, the capsule first
Skylab
onto the ship, and then they will be helped out. Because it's a lot easier when you have been in microgravity for a long time, basically. And so just so you can
there's the divers.
Notice the sort of trade-offs here, where it's 10 days. And, in the future might be a lot more time out there. So
looks intact.
And you can definitely see those sniffer rods there from the looks of it, as they've been testing everything, all the air around it, for any remaining of the hypergolic propellants that they use on board, what do they use for Orion, Alex?
Sorry, I was
Oh,
paying
they're
attention to
testing.
another thing. Can you repeat that, please?
What are
Because
the
they don't want an
hydraulics that they
explosion.
use on
I
Orion?
see.
I believe it's hydrazine. It's monopropellant.
Hydrazine.
So you don't need like a fuel and oxidizer. You use hydrazine. You run it through a catalytic material, and so it sort of decomposes, and that creates the reaction that you want. That's
Right.
usually what is normally used in these cases.
It's very poisonous.
Yeah.
And I believe that was what they were calling out earlier, well before the reentry, when they were talking about the hot firing before the separation of the European service module.
Exactly. So hopefully those numbers come back, and if all is good, then we'll see them approach.
Testing.
Again with
Amazing
those.
just to see.
I was
Go
going to say the helicopters. I love seeing them. The MH-60S Seahawk helicopters as they keep coming through. They will be extracting the crew once they are on board the floating front porch, which I'm now going to just call the deck.
ahead.
Hey, it's a boat. It's got a deck, right?
Absolutely. It just seemed to make more sense for me.
Yeah. Again, seeing those crews do that. If you're used to seeing the SpaceX crew launches, they do something very similar. It just usually doesn't take as long in this case, but it's very similar in how they do it. However, at that point, they wouldn't work on opening up the hatch, so that was less of a concern. They would continue to do more of those sniffs once it was on the SpaceX recovery vessel.
I mean, they're just...
In this case, though, since they will be removing
not
the
willing to
crew
make a
at
mistake
this point,
at
and
this
then
point.
having them remove the crew via helicopter, that is why it's a little bit different and why they may be taking a little extra time. So yeah, it's amazing the amount of people
Fucking
out
we
there
did
to do
it.
this, and these teams have been trained
Success!
years and years for this exact thing of working with the capsule, getting the people out, going through
Made
this
it,
whole
folks.
choreographed routine, and now to finally be able to do it in actuality. Amazing. Now at this point, it has been about 40-ish minutes or so since the crew has splashed down. And we continue to wait for these dive teams to approach the capsule Integrity after its journey around the moon. Amazing. Again, I saw someone say it perfectly earlier of, we waited 9 days for them to come back. We can wait the extra 30 minutes for the hatch to open.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm sure they can take that little time alone there.
For sure.
Safety
On their own.
first as well. They're obviously doing lots of testing and getting themselves ready. As we mentioned before multiple times, this is all part of the entire Artemis program they are readying themselves for, not just the Artemis 2 mission itself. I'm sure there's a lot of things that they're having to train up for and get ready for future missions.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously this is taking a bit of time, Alex. What do they have to do before they get the crew out?
I hit him up and I was like, yo,
Yeah,
I think
so
you guys
obviously
would really
we still need to see
enjoy,
them do the
like, we're
the
gonna
whole
go to
thing
Cuba. I think this is
with
like right
the-
up your alley.
with
He
the
was like,
inflatable
bet.
raft, right?
Nice.
Immediately, he's like, yep, we're down. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I know one of their quotes was solidarity is in the bones of the Irish people, and that's
It's
why we're
true.
here. Yeah,
It's
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Irish people are, as I like to say, the coolest white people I ever met in my life.
My husband is of
unconditionally.
Irish heritage, so he'd love to hear
Well,
that.
Irish Americans are a little different. Irish Americans.
Okay, you're taking it back. I see.
Yeah, Irish Americans are a little different, and the Irish folks would say that too.
Yeah, I
Some of them
suppose-
could be cool.
I
Some of them could be
suppose,
cool,
yeah.
but they are way too Americanized for the
The
most part.
diaspora is always more wretched than.
Oh no! Don't even get me started. I'm in hot water. One of the things that people are yelling at me, the RNC is just like, I've spoken for 21,000 hours on Twitch
Yeah.
in front of the camera,
I
like
can't-
literally
that's-
21,000 hours, right?
wow.
So they're like finding choice clips out of context to be like, he's this, he's that. They're like claiming I'm basically everything that I'm not.
Right.
You know, obviously the common one is anti-Semitic. And you know a bit about that from your own personal experience for many, many years being one of the standalone
Ilhan
figures
Omar,
that,
folks, with the moon
was
landing.
resilient in her commitment to Palestinian sovereignty.
One of the best people in Congress right now.
One of the things that
Ilhan
people will constantly rip on me or constantly clip out of context is like whenever
queen.
someone will be like Latinos for Trump or, you know, like there was like a Vietnamese for MAGA movement or something. And they'll clip it out of context when I'm like yelling at someone to be like, he's yelling at this Vietnamese lady, like he's racist towards the Vietnamese. It's like, no, I'm yelling at them because they're reactionary.
Right.
Like I'm yelling at them because they're trying to use standpoint epistemology to justify like Nazi politics.
Yeah, and
well, they're about to open the door.
Here in the US?
They're opening the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is
so
what it
hard
is.
to
That's like
do.
one of the things that they're doing. I mean, I saw a lot of that with Iran too initially, when people from the diaspora would be like, "No, you don't understand. America's going to liberate the country."
Yeah.
Many
and
of them.
One of the first things they did was bomb a school full of children.
Yeah, sure.
girls.
That's liberation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is liberation.
But what I was going to say is, as far as like not going back to the previous formation with the JCPOA under the Biden administration, what do you think that was about? Because like
both of these are live
heard
right now, by the way,
from a lot of prominent Democrats since Donald Trump came into office. I rarely ever hear, even in the first term, that the JCPOA was a positive thing. It was a move in the positive direction. And even now, when Democrats, from a partisan perspective, that might want to attack Donald Trump to be like, see, we did this better than you did. Like, this has been a spectacular quagmire that you got us into alongside Israel. They rarely ever mention Barack Obama's JCPOA, even though Barack Obama is probably the most popular, Democrat alive right now.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think his vice president and then president, Joe Biden, was against it.
Yeah.
And so the understanding after the Trump administration, when Biden got elected, was that he was going to do something different. And I don't know why we never got to what that different thing was, because nothing really happened that was structural in any kind of way that Democrats could rally around.
Exactly.
So you still had the Pelosi's
describing the Democratic
of
Party
the Democratic Party that kept holding on to the deal Obama reached with the Iranians, and then you had other Democrats like the Schumer wing of our party that was like, please let's not talk about this because we don't want that deal. So, and one thing that also people don't often talk about is the MOU that got us the $3.8 billion guarantee yearly to Israel was part of the selling point for the Democrats that eventually ended up supporting the JCPOA. So it's not it's not that it didn't come with a headache for our party to contend with. It came with this blanket check to Israel that has
3.8 a year,
3.8 annually. That has allowed for us to be complacent in genocide, that has allowed for us to be dragged into war with Iran, that has allowed for the capitulation of some of these Middle Eastern countries with Israel. So yes, there was a good thing that came from it for a little bit, and eventually it led to the devastation we're watching right now. But it also was, something that allowed for the genocide in Gaza, and guaranteed them this impunity, the impunity that we provide to Israel forever.
So let's talk about that, because AOC recently came out after having a conversation with New York DSA and said that she's now in favor of no aid or no financial aid to Israeli weapons purchases. This has now officially become the new litmus test for a lot of rising stars in the party that want to prove their progressive bona fides. And
like they're going to get them out.
One, why do you think
the
offensive defensive restriction, in your own words, is inconsequential?
Oh wait, do they already have them?
You not make a difference between the two? And then two, do you feel like this gives us an opportunity to push for even more?
Yeah, for me, I've always looked at it as military support on behalf of the American taxpayer is military support on behalf of the American taxpayer. To me, whether I
had 44
give you
camera set up and came right back to the press site to get set up for this.
Your...
there's actually some really cool treats in store for that one, considering the new location of Falcon 9's new LZ or landing zone. So stay tuned for that, because there should hopefully be some goodies coming in the early afternoon. But let's focus on this for now.
Yep, but still, worth noting that look at all these live streams that we've done and that we have scheduled. So yeah, all of these are live videos that we've done, have done, and will do coming up. And there's plenty more. So if we have a camera there, we will live stream it for you.
We've been busy bees, haven't we?
Yeah. Can you believe that we were, what was it, 9 or 10-ish days ago since launch, Max?
I was... The best way I can probably describe this, just from a time experience perspective, from someone on the ground who was lucky enough to be on site for launch, is the 4 and a bit days leading up to the lunar flyby seemed like they were taking forever. Like it seemed like they were dragging just give myself center here real quick. There we go. It seemed like that dragging is kind of the wrong word, but the days seemed longer than they were. Maybe that was just because we weren't used to following something like this so closely for so long that time both just kind of melded together and also kind of stretched out. But those 4 days leading up to the lunar flyby felt like
so unrestrained when they know that they have unlimited defense from the United States of America, not only with the amount of money that we spend on the MOU, but also on top of that, we have directed assets to the region.
The door's open
in the 12-day war, and obviously in the last 40 days as well in Operation Epstein's Fury.
Door's open.
So, it's unlimited billions of dollars that we are wasting away. Tens of billions of dollars worth of assets have been destroyed in the region, and
we have dead American soldiers.
Yeah, and we have
that
dead
are coming
American
back
soldiers.
in caskets. Their families are going to be devastated for the rest of their lives.
And all of that because Donald Trump was the only president dumb enough to get goaded into taking action and follow through on Benjamin Netanyahu's agenda that he's been very open about for 40 years. I mean, he openly admitted, this is what I wanted
what
for
are they
40
doing?
years.
Yeah.
And Trump did it. I'm so eternally grateful. It's obviously pointless.
Well, Netanyahu, I think, counted he bet on at least finding 1 or 2 dumb people who would become president of the United States that he could get them to
been waiting
to war for him.
Yeah.
One was Bush that took us to Iraq. And then now it's Trump that took us to Iran.
Also, I just want to interrupt this broadcast for a brief moment to show that the Artemis launch is officially, they're pulling out the astronauts. This was a $2 billion endeavor and therefore deeply anti-Semitic, because that's $2 billion that could have been sent to the nation state of Israel. And therefore, don't laugh, Congresswoman. And therefore I disagree with a waste of money to go to the moon and back.
Yeah, same.
It's probably a really great way to spend money. Hopefully they discover
exactly.
Really
I
cool
agree.
things.
Thank you.
I'm in support.
Yeah,
I agree.
No, me too.
Again, that one that's right up against Orion, those are the
They're not
divers
pulling them
that will
out
go
just
in
yet. They're going to tow them
to the
into an aircraft
spacecraft
carrier.
to
Oh,
check on
damn.
each of
Okay,
the
never mind. The
astronauts.
nerds in the chat are correcting me. They're
These
not
other
pulling them out of
boats
the.
will begin doing a
They're
number
not
of
pulling them
things,
out yet.
putting on that stabilization collar onto Orion.
Okay, never mind.
What are they doing? What are they saying?
I
don't even know how you read this.
What, the chat?
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a skill, definitely.
Okay, I'm about to have an aneurysm. I can't look at
Yeah,
it.
don't look at the chat. It's not good anyway. It's absolutely not good. But
okay,
yeah.
blah blah.
Let's go NASA.
All right, we're gonna go on to our own stuff now. Because it's a success, and that's great. We need more of that. Like she said, that's a good way to spend billions of dollars versus the war.
Massive strikes.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome to Democracy Now!,
News,
democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's military is continuing attacks on Lebanon, threatening to derail a fragile 2-week ceasefire agreement ahead of high-stakes talks between the U.S. and Iran in Islamabad this weekend. The death toll from Israel's massive strikes across Lebanon Wednesday has topped 300. More than 1,150 people have been injured. The Financial Times described Israel's attack as, quote, one of the deadliest single bombing campaigns in the history of a country racked by decades of war and destruction, unquote. Israel and the U.S. have claimed the Iran ceasefire deal does not include Lebanon, but numerous other nations disagree. The U.S. is expected to host talks between Israel and Lebanon next
the smell
week
there is
in
terrible,
Washington.
by the way.
After headlines, we'll go to Beirut to speak with the award-winning journalist Rania Abu Zaid. Iranian officials have warned the United States not to allow Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to derail the 2-week regional ceasefire by continuing attacks on Lebanon. On Thursday, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi wrote on social media, quote, if the U.S. wishes to crater its economy by letting Netanyahu kill diplomacy, that would ultimately be its choice. We think that would be dumb, but are prepared for it, unquote. Araghchi's language mirrors language used by Vice President J.D. Vance, warning Iran not to let the ceasefire fall apart over Lebanon. Vance is heading to Pakistan today for high-level talks with Iran and Islamabad. He'll join U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, who previously held negotiations with Iran that were derailed twice when the U.S. and Israel began bombing Iran. House Republicans have rejected an effort by Democrats to force a vote on resolution to limit President Trump's ability to wage war in Iran. On Thursday, with most of Congress still on recess, Maryland Democratic Congressmember Glenn Ivey rose to speak during a pro forma session where he asked to pass an Iran war powers resolution by unanimous consent. But Republican Speaker pro tempore Chris Smith quickly gavelled the session to a close without allowing Ivey to speak.
Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the House stays adjourned until 2:30 p.m. on Monday, April 13th, 2026.
Congressmember Ivey and other House Democrats gathered on the Capitol steps after their attempt to force a vote on a war powers resolution was pushed off until at least next week. This is Pennsylvania Congresswoman Madeleine Dean.
Over the weekend, we read and heard the president's Easter morning tweet of profanity, blasphemy, danger, and the following day, his threat to eliminate an entire civilization. Pause there. These are not normal times, America.
No shit.
When will my Republican colleagues stand up in the House, in the Senate, the Vice President, the cabinet secretaries who surround this madman? When will they grow a spine? When will they say, stop?
Israel's cabinet has secretly approved the establishment of 34 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, Israel's largest ever recognition of unauthorized outposts in a single step. The cabinet made the decision on April 1st, but it was classified until Thursday when an Israeli military censor approved it for publication. This comes amidst a sharp rise in Israeli settler violence against Palestinians. On Wednesday, 28-year-old Ala Khaled Sabi was shot and killed as armed Israeli settlers attacked the village of Taysir, east of Tubas. Separately, 65-year-old Palestinian farmer Hussam Abdelatif Wadan says he narrowly escaped a mob that descended on his farm.
Oh, fuck.
Yesterday, they attacked us. I was on my way to open the water irrigation system, and they attacked me, around 12 settlers. I escaped, thank God. They were very close to me, only around 10 meters away.
The UN reports over 1,070 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem by Israeli forces or settlers since October 2023. In the Gaza Strip, health officials say Israeli soldiers shot and killed a 9-year-old girl in front of her third-grade class Thursday, traumatizing students and teachers who were left in psychological shock. Ritaj Rahan was reportedly struck by a bullet without warning as she was sitting at her desk in a tent serving as a classroom in Beit Lahia. Video and photos show her bloodied body being rushed through the streets toward a hospital on foot since there was no medical transport available in the area. She was one of 4 Palestinians killed by Israeli attacks across Gaza on Thursday. Mourners also gathered for the funeral of the Al Jazeera journalist Mohammed Wass, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his car Wednesday. Al Jazeera reports Israel's attack Gaza on 36 out of the past 40 days, despite a U.S. brokered ceasefire that was supposed to have taken effect 6 months ago. A federal judge has rebuked the Department of Defense for defying his earlier ruling requiring the Pentagon to restore access to credentialed journalists. U.S. District Judge Paul Friedman ruled Thursday Trump administration officials had committed a blatant attempt to circumvent a lawful order, unquote, after they failed to comply with his March 20th ruling voiding large sections of a highly restrictive press policy introduced by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, which violated the First Amendment. In October, dozens of reporters turned in their government-issued press badges rather than agree to the rules, which state that news outlets cannot obtain any information that the Pentagon does not explicitly authorize. Thursday's ruling reinstates the press credentials of 7 New York Times reporters and applies to other members of the Pentagon Press Association. A federal judge in Washington, D.C., has postponed the termination of temporary protected status, TPS, for about 5,000 Ethiopian immigrants living in the U.S. after determining the Trump administration likely disregarded the rules Congress set up for the TPS program. Wednesday's ruling comes as the Supreme Court is poised to hear oral arguments later this month on challenges to the Trump administration's attempts to cancel protected status for over 350,000 Haitians and 6,000 Syrians.
Damn. What a piece of shit.
The United Nations Migration Agency warns over 180 people are feared dead or missing in the latest shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, including more than 80 migrants who went missing when their boat capsized Sunday after departing from Libya. The International Organization for Migration reports nearly.
Hold on, chat. Hold on. YouTube's taking a shit. Es no bueno. floor. You know everything. Oh, we got so many good videos. I can't get my video player to work. Okay, there we go. We're good. We're good now. Let's go.
Migration reports nearly 1,000 people have died attempting to cross the Mediterranean into Europe since January, one of the deadliest starts to a year since record-keeping began.
Fuck.
First Lady Melania Trump unexpectedly summoned reporters to the White House Thursday, where she read from a prepared statement denying any relationship with the late serial sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
I have never had any knowledge of Epstein abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island.
Melania Trump also acknowledged she'd exchanged emails with Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, in 2002, but dismissed it as a casual correspondence. A document from the Justice Department's incomplete release of the Epstein files shows Maxwell referred to Melania in an email as Sweet Pea, to which Melania replied, "Give me a call when you're back in New York." The letter concluded, "Love, Melania." Melania Trump infamously appears in a 2000 photo posing alongside her husband and next to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Meanwhile, the First Lady is calling on Congress to hold a public hearing specifically centered around Epstein survivors. In response, the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Robert Garcia, said he agreed, urging Republican Committee Chair James Comer to schedule hearings immediately. The First Lady's comments reportedly caught White House officials off guard, including President Trump, who told an MS Now reporter he had no prior knowledge of what his wife was preparing to say. The acting director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has blocked the publication of research showing COVID vaccines were highly effective at preventing hospitalizations for healthy adults last winter. The Washington Post reports the findings had cleared the CDC's scientific review process and were scheduled for publication March 19th in the agency's flagship scientific journal before acting director Jay Bhattacharya personally intervened to withhold the report. In 2020, Bhattacharya was a main author of the Great Barrington Declaration, which argued against COVID lockdowns at a time when no vaccines were available. Argentina's Congress has approved legislation that rolls back protections for thousands of glaciers, making it easier for large-scale mining projects to move forward. The reforms are supported by Argentina's far-right president, Javier Milei. Environmentalists warn the legislation threatens critical freshwater reserves that are the source of drinking water for about 7 million people. On Thursday, protesters rallied outside the National Congress building in Buenos Aires.
I would tell the lawmakers that they were elected to represent the interests of the people, not those of the big mining companies or big capital, and that they should rise to the occasion because today they may get the deal that they want, but this affects all of us. Tomorrow, they too will suffer the consequences of not having water.
Hundreds of doctors, nurses, and public health workers have signed an open letter demanding the removal of Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin. They warn Zeldin is, quote, pursuing a deregulatory agenda that will result in a massive increase in health-damaging air pollution, toxic chemicals, and climate-heating greenhouse gases, unquote. On Wednesday, Zeldin delivered a keynote address to a gathering of the Heartland Institute, a right-wing think tank that promotes climate misinformation. Zeldin celebrated his decision to revoke the 2009 endangerment finding, which allowed the EPA to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act, and praised the Trump administration's rollback of fuel efficiency standards for new cars and trucks.
Manufacturers should make whatever the American consumer wants, rather than what politicians and bureaucrats demand. This morning and today, all of you gathered here in D.C., is a moment to celebrate. It is a day to celebrate.
Let's put lead back in gas. Why not? It didn't do anything to all the boomers that are growing up now that breathed it in 1970 and before. No, it's good.
Vindication.
Zeldin's comments came as NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, confirmed last month was the hottest March on record for the contiguous United States, with temperatures more than 9 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average. The finding comes as forecasters warn a strong El Niño is likely to exacerbate global heating from human activity, which could make this year surpass 2024 as the hottest year on record. Sources say Zeldin is being rumored to be under consideration to replace Pam Bondi as Attorney General. And Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with the chair of Taiwan's main opposition party in a landmark meeting, the first of its kind in a decade. Speaking from the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, President Xi declared China will absolutely not tolerate independence for Taiwan and called for the island's reunification with the People's Republic of China. Cheng Li-wen, who leads Taiwan's KMT party, replied that the Taiwan Strait should no longer be a flashpoint for a potential conflict and warned against external interference, an apparent reference to U.S. and Japanese support for Taiwan. Cheng has called her 6-day visit to mainland China a journey of peace. It comes as Taiwan's opposition-controlled parliament has stalled a proposed $40 billion increase in military spending. This is Cheng Li-wen.
What should be flying in the sky are birds, not missiles, and what should be swimming in the sea are fish, not warships. Human technology should be used to seek well-being for humanity and for the Earth. Human technology should not be for mutual slaughter or for the destruction of ecosystems.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on.
There's like no level of lead that's good for you in your bloodstream. None. None levels. Mine are probably off the charts.
Today, Pope Leo, in a rare statement in English, so Donald Trump could understand him, he directed a statement at Donald Trump that tried to convince Donald Trump to not go through.
No shit. He threatened to bomb the Vatican.
Through with his threatened war crimes today against Iran.
He's going to talk about that.
Asking all people of goodwill to search always for peace and not violence, to reject war, especially a war which many people have said is an unjust war, which is continuing to escalate, and which is
don't say you think it's unjust. What?
Anything. Let's remember, especially the innocent.
Many people,
children, the elderly, the sick. So many people who have already become or will become victims of this continued warfare. To remind all that. Attacks on civilian infrastructure is against international law, but that it is also a sign of the hatred, the division, the destruction that the human being is capable of, and we all want to work for peace.
Also today, our next guest, Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, who has voted twice to stop Donald Trump's illegal war in Iran, said, quote, "We have a warmonger in the White House. He has threatened war crimes on an apocalyptic scale and appears eager to commit them. The House and Senate must return to session. The House must pass articles of impeachment, and then the Senate must vote to convict and remove the president, or the cabinet and vice president, with congressional concurrence, must invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump. His threats cannot be dismissed as mere rhetoric.
He's right.
This is as grave a moment
the boomer
as the world
is
has
right.
faced in the nuclear era." Joining us now is Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. What is your reaction to Donald Trump as Iran puts it, surrendering now and stopping his war, leaving Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz.
This is insane.
Yeah, Donald Trump has surrendered, not the Iranians. And what he has been doing over the last several days is an impeachable offense. He has threatened a genocide against a nation. He has threatened to end a civilization. He has threatened to use nuclear weapons against a country that does not have nuclear weapons. All of these are impeachable offenses, and he must be brought to justice. The House and Senate should be brought back into session. There should be articles of impeachment brought against him by the Democrats in the House of Representatives. We need to make Donald Trump accountable for what he has just done in the name of the American people. And I think this is going to be a defining moment for the Congress, for the American people. We cannot allow Donald Trump, in control of nuclear weapons, to be invoking this madman theory of the destruction of a civilization in the name of the American people without him being brought to accountability. The impeachment process must begin.
We have reports tonight of over 50 House Democrats agreeing with you on this, over 20 Senate Democrats agreeing with you on exactly this. I want to read you the one statement we have about this from a Senate Republican, and that's Senator Lisa Murkowski. Every other Senate Republican has avoided saying a word about it. She said, "The president's threat that a whole civilization will die tonight cannot be excused away as an attempt to gain leverage in negotiations with Iran. This type of rhetoric is an affront to the ideals of our nation, has sought to uphold and promote around the world for nearly 250 years. It undermines our longstanding role as a global beacon of freedom and directly endangers Americans both abroad and at home." But the rest of your Republican Senate colleagues are absolutely silent, along with the Republican Speaker of the House, who did not say one word about this today.
My Republican colleagues are spineless. They are in a witness protection program. It's almost like the invasion of the body snatchers. You look at them, they look like the same human beings, but inside it just MAGA controlled, Trump controlled. They just don't have the courage to stand up when something which is clearly a violation of everything that our country is supposed to stand for is being compromised by Donald Trump.
Moving on.
Do you think Donald Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yes.
You think he should win the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah.
What do you think about the war with Iran?
Bomb the shit out of him and get out.
And do you think Donald Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, because that's peace, right?
We are here outside the Gaylord Convention Center in Dallas, Texas for CPAC. Hell on Earth, as I like to call it. And I'm sure a lot of other people would call it that as well. How do you feel about the war in Iran?
I support it. Yeah.
Wow, there was a long pause there. Would you want to see Donald Trump run in 2028?
No, I don't think he's going to run in 2028.
If he did run, would you vote for him in 2028?
Yeah, I think he's a good president. I think his.
But that would be against the Constitution.
I guess it's against the Constitution. I don't know. I haven't.
No, it is. It is.
I haven't really dug into it. So.
Would you vote for Donald Trump in 2028 if he ran?
Absolutely.
Even though it's against the Constitution?
Oh no. It'd have to be within the rules of the law of the land. Yeah.
Trump has a bunch of shirts and hats that say Trump 2028. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Tease everybody.
Tease them?
Yeah, just goat them. Yeah, piss them off.
In your mind, what's the greatest accomplishment Donald Trump has accomplished at this point?
I think the greatest accomplishment has been securing the border. Immigration's my number one issue. And so getting the number of border crossings down, and then I'd love to see him ramp back up mass deportations.
You want mass deportations ramped back up?
I want more deportations than we currently have, yes.
And why is that?
All right.
because there's a lot of people in this country who shouldn't be in this country. I'd love to see America have a shared culture once again.
America, you know, famously a melting pot of cultures.
Right.
What is
Including
America's
you,
culture?
sir.
Well, America's culture can largely, if you trace it back to the founding, there's lots of different things you can evaluate based off of, but we speak English in America. It was founded by Christians.
Would you like to see the Bible taught in schools?
I would. But it doesn't have to. I mean, I think it should be allowed if parents want it.
As a history book, or?
Oh, definitely as a history book, yeah.
The Bible as a history book?
Sure, I think it's loaded with history. It's proven over and over by archaeology.
That Noah's flood, like everyone on Earth dying, except for a few people. You think that's historical fact?
Yeah. I think that there's lots of archaeology that has proven the Bible, and so I don't think it's wrong using it as a history book.
Christian
What the
values.
fuck?
Love thy neighbor. Jesus was a very accepting person. Do you think Jesus would be deporting people?
Yeah, well, if you read the book of Nehemiah, like one of the big purposes of Nehemiah in the Old Testament was to build a wall and to secure a place for the Israelite people, as well as you look in the Old Testament, all throughout the Old Testament, it says that foreigners coming in and overrunning the native population, that's a curse, not something that should be celebrated.
And so the United States was founded by foreigners coming in and overrunning the native population, right?
Yes, it was, and largely that could be seen as an indictment, a curse on that native population. It didn't work out for the Native Americans when they had the foreigners come in and overrun them.
What? Look who it is. That's
Are you worried about climate change?
TV. I got everything.
Do you
Buy
think the
my
Noah's Ark
mattress.
story
I got
is
a
a
pillow
historical
for you.
fact?
MyPillow.com.
And what happens in that story? What's Noah doing beforehand?
What do you mean living life and then being told by God to build an ark?
And then what is he telling everyone?
To repent.
To repent, and that he's telling them that there's going to
His
be.
judgment. Yeah.
Well, he was telling them that there's going to be a flood, right?
Yeah, he did tell them there was going to be a flood.
He was warning them about a change in the climate.
So are you trying to say that that climate change is a warning to us of God's judgment?
Are you trying to tell me that?
Could be.
Oh.
Are you heeding that warning right now?
Well, I'm heeding the warning.
Wait, are you Noah in this situation, or are you the people saying that it's wrong?
Well, okay, so I am not warning of a cataclysmic event. Would be warning of repentance.
Okay. What does this say? Gun rights or women's rights? What does that mean?
I don't know. Somebody gave me the badge.
Okay.
Huh?
No idea.
Gun rights or women's rights? You're just wearing it?
I don't do this women's stuff.
Do you think the Bible should be taught in schools?
100%.
As a history book, science book?
Grant May.
History. I think there's lots we can learn from it, values-wise. The Ten Commandments, America was founded largely as a Christian nation, and so I think we need to return to our roots.
But do you think, like,
he's doxing himself?
Teaching it as a history book, like Noah's flood, is that historically accurate that everyone on Earth died?
Yes.
You think that 100% happened?
Yes.
Sorry, Grant, but those beautiful, luscious eyebrows you have did not come from a white guy.
They have 22 mine droppers. They got mine droppers. And the mine droppers, 22, all 22.
Do you think Donald Trump is pro-life?
Yeah, pretty much.
The U.S. just bombed a school in Iran, and they killed, 160 girls.
War is a little different than just regular pro-life.
And do you think God created a man and a woman, and there was a garden with a talking snake?
Yep, if the Bible says it, I believe it.
Okay. Why do you think Donald Trump was fighting the release of the Epstein files over the summer?
I think he was protecting some of his friends.
Donald Trump was protecting his friends in the Epstein files?
Guys, yeah.
Is that a presidential thing to do, to protect rich and powerful people?
They all do it. They all do it.
But there was victims of sex crimes, young girls that were hurt.
I understand.
Should Donald Trump be protecting people who committed crimes, heinous crimes with young girls?
No.
Okay. But that is what you said he just did, right?
Yes. I don't have a problem with it.
You don't have a problem with him?
No, because I support him because of his policies for America.
Do you think Donald Trump is a pro-life president?
Yeah, I think overall he's a pro-life president. I think
She just says she doesn't care what he does, just what he does for her.
They gutted the funding of USAID, and that has led
He's
to
a very
the death
selfish person.
of over 600,000 people in the world.
yeah, I don't know about that. But
She would shoot you in the back.
It says in the Bible, if a man lays with a man as he lays with a woman, they've committed an abomination. Surely they should be put to death. Do you agree with that?
I don't think they should be killed, but I think it's immoral.
No. That's God's word. Donald Trump gutted USAID, and that's led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Is that pro-life?
Well, I don't know about the pro-life part of that. I know that funding was definitely being misused in a lot of different areas. Maybe good in some areas,
But it's causing the death of hundreds of thousands of people. Is that a pro-life thing to do, or
I think you're using terms that you're just trying to put in a category. So,
category being like life? You want people to live, not die.
So are you saying that like everybody, no matter what, we just don't do anything and we just let everybody live no matter what they do or what they don't do? I mean, I don't want innocent people to die.
It's like people in like giving vaccines to people in Africa.
It doesn't mean that we need to constantly, spend money that's being misspent on things. And I don't know about the people that you're talking about, but
Would you like to see everyone in the United States of America Christian?
I would love that.
And what would that look like?
Well, that would look like people being regenerate believers who repent of their sin, believe in Jesus Christ, believe the gospel, and I believe it would make this country a much better place.
Do you think the government should take an active role in making people Christian?
No, but I think we should have a Christian government.
So this brand new red MAGA Trump tumbler, and for only $10, you can get a limited time for this promotion. The red Trump tumbler is a stylish and functional.
You want somebody farther to the right than Donald Trump?
Absolutely. I want Stephen Miller to take the reins as far as mass deportations.
Would you like to see ICE at polling places for the midterms?
Absolutely.
And what would that accomplish?
It would accomplish that, hey, kind of like at the airport now, I felt much better that they were all there. I feel better because it'll keep the bad guys away.
I think we need to deport at least 50 million people.
50 million people?
Yes.
Do you think Pete Hegseth is pro-life?
Yes. Yeah.
He bombed a school with 160 Iranian children. All right, there you have it.
Gutfeld, 5 o'clock in New York on this Friday, and this is the 5. So happening just a couple moments ago, President Trump leaving the White House on his way to Virginia. This as we are in for a huge historic moment in the next 24 hours or so. We're on the eve of tomorrow's very high stakes peace talks with Iran. There's the vice president getting onto the plane earlier today on his way to Pakistan, which one official tells Axios is like, quote, JD going to the Super Bowl. And Iranian state media claims regime officials are already there preparing for this meeting, getting their own talking points ready on the ground. President Trump issuing a stern warning to Tehran on Truth Social. And here is what the president said. The Iranians don't seem to realize they have no cards other than a short-term extortion of the world by using international waterways. The only reason they're alive today is to negotiate. President Donald J. Trump. The vice president offering this preview. Watch.
I think it's going to be positive. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The president has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see.
So meanwhile, critics are still upset with President Trump for spiking former President Obama's Iran nuclear deal.
It's a very strong agreement, sadly walked away from, not for substantive reasons, but because President Obama did it.
The Strait was open before he started this.
Yeah,
and
but they were close to having a nuclear weapon, 11 nuclear weapons.
We had other ways of dealing.
Like what, Obama's way?
Well, that worked.
That did not work.
Did they get a nuclear weapon under Obama?
He's right. Judge with a beard now, talking about Iran. All right, so, Jesse, let's start with you. I thought it was very interesting today that the Iranian parliament leader, and we never know when these statements come out, who's actually holding the current list of what the points of negotiation are. But he came out and sort of said there were 2 points. Lebanon has to stop being bombed, and we want money. They always want money in these Iranian deals. They want their money unfrozen from foreign banks. And it almost struck me as a way of them saying, these are the absolute 2 things that we're not going to give on. But the list could be a lot longer.
Makes sense.
You watch J.D. Vance, Jesse, go up the staircase there. There's a lot riding on the vice president's shoulders when you think about geopolitical issue and his political future as well.
He's never done an international deal before. This is the first time. So no pressure. No pressure at all. He could come out of this 0-1 or undefeated. So he does have a beard, and so do the Iranians. So I think that's a good sign. I would not be afraid to walk away. Sometimes when you walk away from a deal, it ends up helping the deal get done. I could see them BSing us in Islamabad in the first half hour. I would blow it up. I'd say, you know what? Ceasefire's off. These guys aren't serious. Let's go to bridge and power plant day. Because what that does, that would actually put Iran in a weaker position, and it would just make the entire world realize these people are causing mayhem economically. And you can always hit them again. Now, I don't even know if the Iranian delegation has the clout to do this deal. I mean, I don't even know if they speak for the military or not. So who knows? We might just have to hit him again. I wouldn't be shocked if talks blow up and the Iranian delegation goes back home and Trump drops a tomahawk on him. Wouldn't be shocked if that happened. He did say the only reason they're alive is to do a deal. I also wouldn't be shocked if he blew it up and we did a naval blockade of Karg Island or seized an Iranian oil tanker. A lot of options are on the table because we've been building up assets in the region even after the ceasefire started. And at the end of 12 days now, you're going to have the Boxer, the Ford, the Tripoli, the Bush, all in theater, and it gives the president flexibility. Now, no one takes John Kerry seriously except John Kerry. He and Obama gave these guys money, missiles, sunset provisions. They let him enrich, and then they gave him a heads up before they went and did the inspection. It's the stupidest deal of all time. Iran got more powerful. Their proxies got more powerful. It was actually the reverse Abraham Accords. You empower the Iranians and you screw the Jews and the Arabs. None of it makes sense. I don't even know why he's on television.
So, Kayleigh, the president has sort of 2 things to contend with here. We had a strong inflation number this morning. And then he has the other voices, and obviously we know he's the ultimate person who makes all these decisions, but he takes it all in, who are saying finish the job. Yeah. So if Jesse's scenario happens and J.D. Vance walks out, we saw that once in North Korea in the first term, just a walkout. Like, this isn't going anywhere. President Trump walked right out the door, and he probably told J.D. Vance, you know, the same thing, empowered him to do exactly that. But he's got these 2 things he's contending with. What's your take, knowing him and working in the White House as you did, on where he is right now on all this?
I think he's someone who's going to finish the deal. I've been in those meetings where he sat across from hostile foreign powers. And I can tell you this, he is very, very, very tough on them. And what you see in front of the camera, what you saw with Zelensky, by way of example, that contentious Oval Office meeting, that's just what you see in front of cameras. He knows how to put pressure on behind the scenes, and so do his emissaries, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Sure. And I've worked with Jared Kushner. I've seen him operate. He is whip smart. He knows how to read people.
What's his negotiation style like in the room?
He sits very quietly. He takes it all in, and he inserts himself at the right points with the knowledge of someone who knows exactly what he's doing, how to put pressure points on the administration. Steve Witkoff there, both of them, great experience. They're the ones who got the hostages home. People said that couldn't be done. The Gaza ceasefire, they said couldn't be done. Those 2 got it done. J.D. Vance, apparently a key person to getting to this moment. So I think he's a great added voice. But I think what's different here with this administration is this. The Iranians do not respect words, but they do respect action.
What Gaza ceasefire?
And they look at Obama and they saw, to your point, a deal with sunset provisions that sunset in 10 to 15 years. There was not anywhere, anytime inspections. They certainly were not implemented. They looked at that deal and they saw it as weak, and they violated it time and time again. They looked at Biden. What did they see? The withdrawal from Afghanistan, the 13 lost U.S. service members, Abbey Gate. They saw that, and they saw a president who just said don't. When they look across from Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, they are going to be looking at a administration that took out the Ayatollah within 24 hours, that put hard power behind the soft power. That is something Obama never did. It's something Biden never did. It is something, trust me, President Trump has done. It's done in Venezuela, has done in Iran, and will do it again. They are going to treat this very differently. It might blow up. I agree with you. But I'll tell you this, they know that they're dealing with someone who is a man of his word. And I think he finishes the deal ultimately. Maybe not tomorrow, but he will.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Jessica, the points that Kayleigh makes about prior negotiations with the Obama administration and the Biden administration. And I think back to the Biden 6-for-6 hostage deal, and then we threw in $6 billion on top of it for a sweetener of money that was released. They want their money out of these foreign banks. This is one of the biggest issues for them. They say, I interviewed the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, about 10 months ago, and he said, well, you know, it's not our fault that we have a lousy economy, that we can't take care of our people, because you guys are tying our hands with all of our money being held in all these banks. So this is a huge, huge issue for them. But as Kayleigh says, they are sitting at a very different table. And Israel is putting the heat on in Lebanon in a huge way right now. How do you see this playing out?
Well, they definitely want as much money as possible. And good news for them, they get to charge a fee because they control the Strait of Hormuz at this point. And reading President Trump's Truth Social post saying they have no cards except short-term extortion of the world by using international waterways seems like actually a pretty powerful card. I mean, we saw the inflation report, which you already referenced. We know fuel's up over 40% in the last month.
Card you need.
We know that Americans are feeling it. Europeans are feeling it. They're negotiating their own deals if they can. Even Japan, one of our great allies, is. They're getting essentially a 2-week break to rearm. The Russians happy to help. They had their sanctions eased as well for 30 days and $14 billion that came off of the Iranians in terms of sanction easement, is that a word? Easing as well. So I don't think that they're feeling particularly cash poor at this moment. And I know that the administration has been out there saying, oh, you know, those 10 points that Iran sent in, like that's all a fake news farce or whatever it is. Certainly wasn't the messaging that was coming out initially. And that also had sanctions easing. The point that Pete Buttigieg was making this morning on CNBC, I think, is a worthy one, that there was a deal in place. And if you want to change it up, if you want to add new restrictions or enhancements that you think are going to make it better, that's a good place to start. But by ripping it up and then starting from zero and sending in a team of real estate developers who, yes, got hostages out of Gaza, but the ceasefire in Gaza, that's fake too. That's not, ask people what's going on in Gaza right now. There's no ceasefire. And there's the Board of Peace isn't even funded. Maybe we'll get to Gaza-Lago or whatever.
President Trump solved a conflict. How many did Biden solve?
Oh my God. This is the
Name
thing,
one.
and this is what happened with Pete Buttigieg.
Real estate developers,
TV.
I'll put my money on them.
Oh, wait, well, Steve Witkoff apparently didn't understand the terms of nuclear enrichment enough to even know what the Iranians were offering.
Who did you hear that from?
She's a fly on the wall.
Who did you hear that from?
It was
the Iranians?
reported.
Oh,
by who?
By the Iranians.
By Bloomberg.
Right, exactly.
By Bloomberg. Were they in the room?
Okay.
There were two different agreements, one in Farsi and one in English.
That's not the one.
And the one in Farsi removed that phrase.
Also said that he knows what Vladimir Putin is saying and what Vladimir Putin wants in terms of dealing with the Ukrainians. And who in their right mind is going to trust Vladimir Putin about anything? J.D. Vance, like you said, he could come out undefeated. He could come out 0-1. He is new to this process. There is not a team of American diplomats going into it. There's Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff.
Well, the American diplomats for generations have gotten none of this effectively solved. None of it. And these guys do have a good track record. But Greg, I want to bring you in here because I want to go back to where we started with the president's post today. Basically, he said, you're negotiating to stay alive.
Yes. No, that I love hearing that Iran isn't cash poor. They have no economy. They have no infrastructure. Okay.
Except their own houses in London.
They're in a depression. Iran is like a hostage taker, a desperate hostage taker. And you could say, oh, they're in control. They have the Strait of Hormuz. That's their hostage. They're holed up in a bank demanding 3 large pizzas, a helicopter, and a personal phone call from Sydney Sweeney. It's all a face-saving exercise. That's what this theater is right now. How can they get out of this without being thoroughly humiliated in front of their remaining fans? I don't know what you call them. There were 2 different agreements. You know, Trump looked at the terms and says, yeah, we can work with this. And then Iran says in their agreement that they have like driven America to defeat. So who do you believe? Well, the media went for Iran, but maybe you should examine the facts. Who's telling the truth? Who do you believe? The Iranian leader's dead. We have to go through this all over again just to remind them. You know, we have to do this. I apologize. The Iranian leader's dead. Command and control facilities, air defense, naval assets, military leadership, all decimated. But who do you believe? Is Iran the victor or is America? Their entire defense industrial base is destroyed. They can't build missiles, and everybody who can build them are in hiding. Who do you believe? Them or us? Their navy's at the bottom of the sea. 80% of their air defense is gone. Who do you believe? This is what is so great about Trump management. It can make people believe anything. I was almost done.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Guys, it's so funny. I always love to think about Destiny as being like painfully irrelevant, like totally washed, not worth discussing anymore.
Same.
And then I shit you not, Gavin and I are on the last leg of our plane ride home yesterday. And the fellow sitting next to us is actually getting caught up on the news, listening to none other than Destiny on his phone. Now, I'm not trying to put this dude on blast or anything. He seemed like a perfectly nice guy. But I was like, Jesus Christ, Destiny is still out here influencing the discourse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he still does decent numbers, but he's nowhere near as relevant as he once was, which is why we're about to hear him lashing out in a conversation with Tim Miller of the Bulwark. So I'm excited to get your reaction to that.
Why is Tim Miller
just to
interviewing
debunk some of this
Destiny?
absolute bullshit coming out of
disgusting.
Destiny's mouth? This total fucking cope because he
Destiny's
sees his
a
relevance
disgusting
slipping
human
away.
being.
Maybe. I mean, it's a New York City mayor race. I don't know how often. I don't think historically they tend to have that much.
I just meant like just given the nature of that race, the establishment Dems should have just been for him. But fair enough.
I don't disagree with
it
you.
goes
I think,
both ways.
Yeah, especially given that populism is having its moment and all that. Yeah. But when you go through and you look at how
Actually,
like
they
the
probably
Majority
agree on a lot of
Report,
shit.
how Kalinske, how Crystal Ball and Breaking Points, the Young Turks, Hassan, when you look at their treatment of like the Democratic Party, oh my God, it's brutal. One of the examples that you brought up earlier was, you know, when I talked about my buckets of conversation.
And by the way, I'm pretty sure every single one of those people he mentioned endorsed Kamala Harris or like vocally supported Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
What do you want from these people? Just blindly worship politicians and never engage in constructive criticism, the likes of which will actually make the candidates, you know, better, more electable candidates? What the fuck is this? What is this instinct to say, oh no, never criticize the people who we actually want to win? No, the point of constructive criticism is that it actually helps these candidates be more electable and more popular because they're more in touch with the fucking base.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Iron sharpens iron. That's one of the things that we've talked about a lot. The Republican Party understands that, right? We just talked about Donald Trump getting through the 2016 primary. What did he do to get through that primary? He was relentlessly critical of everyone else. What was his base doing? They were relentlessly critical of the party. They went on to win the general election. They humiliated the fucking Democrats. Nobody thought that Donald Trump could win, including myself. I'll take that on the chin. I did not think he could win in 2016. Gavin did. And Gavin was right. I was wrong. I thought for sure the American people would wake up to it. They didn't. And guess what? It didn't hold him back at all that he'd been relentlessly critical of the Republican Party. It actually paved the way for him. It was what allowed him to get across the finish line. What really irks me about Destiny and his politics as it pertains to the Democratic Party and the fact that it's widely shared by a lot of the most insufferable people on the pro-Democratic Party online left is that you can't ever criticize the Democratic Party. They want absolute fealty, right? Like when we went on Peace Go stream, we had 1 million
Bosch, Destiny, all of them.
People just spamming the chat. Well, you criticize Kamala. It's like I voted for Kamala Harris with my whole chest and told every single person in my audience that I thought they should too, especially if they live in a swing state, right? But I am going to be massively critical of the fact that they didn't let a single Palestinian speaker speak at the DNC. I was outside of Chicago, okay? There were so many people outside the United Center protesting, right? There were fucking oceans of people chanting and demanding it. They said, fuck you. Okay, guess what? That's a problem. I'm going to criticize that. And if you can't understand how it would actually make the Democratic Party better if they would have embraced those people and said, we hear you, we understand your criticism, instead of kicking them out, instead of banning people like Hassan from the fucking DNC, which they did, they kicked him out of the fucking United Center, okay? Then they would have been better off, not worse off.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's also just hilarious to hear Destiny say this right after he's done shitting all over Zoran. That's what happened right before this timestamp in the interview. He was shitting on Zoran Mamdani.
So it's like, oh, you only get to criticize progressives. What you really mean is that you have an issue with criticism of corporate Democrats and specifically pro-Israel Democrats. Because that's what he really means when he said, oh, populists are having their moment. What he really means is that it's actually now acceptable and popular to criticize Israel. But he has to speak in this fucking code word because he knows that's super unpopular to defend Israel, which he's spent the last fucking several years doing for no reason. And I think that is directly tied to his waning relevance and his waning view count. There's just less and less appetite from people to want to hear fucking defense of Israel and this weird celebration of a fucking genocidal apartheid state. No one wants to hear it, bro. No one wants to hear your phony fucking intellectual excuses for why Israel gets to commit a genocide and why people who don't support it are somehow bad and wrong. It's crazy. But let's hear this again and also hear from Tim Miller. Let's see his brilliant rebuttal to Destiny here.
But when you go through and you look at how, like, the Majority Report, how Kyle Kalinske, how Crystal Ball and Breaking Points, the Young Turks, Hassan, when you look at their treatment of, like, the Democratic Party, oh my God, it's brutal. Brutal. One of the examples that you brought up earlier was, you know, when I talked about my buckets of conversations, one of the biggest disasters is when you go on think you're going to have one convo and you have another. And you actually brought up an example that I listed, which was Ted Cruz going on Tucker Carlson.
Yeah,
he thought
Alyssa Slotkin going on Breaking Points.
Exactly.
Is that where you're gonna go?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, these Dems for the first time are like, I'm going to try to have this conversation, but they don't understand where the media environment is. Same thing with Ted Cruz. Either Tucker.
Bro, Alyssa Slotkin was unprepared and got humiliated, and she deserved every bit of it. She went on there and she was not prepared to defend her support for a genocidal regime, and she got her whole ass shown by Crystal Ball. That's an L for Alyssa Slotkin, and it's a W for Breaking Points.
Yeah, imagine scolding a journalist for doing their job.
Exactly.
And for actually doing what so much of the rest of the media class is too cowardly to do, which is to actually ask the tough questions and actually probe these uncomfortable questions with people in power like Alyssa Slotkin. Imagine fucking pearl clutching over, again, a journalist doing what 99% of the rest of the media class is too fucking cowardly to do. That was one of the best pieces of journalism I've seen in fucking years done by an interviewer, the likes of which you almost never get to enjoy in this fucking country. Because again, our media class, our journalists are so fucking worthless. All they want to do is kiss the ass of powerful people. It's disgusting watching politicians skate by without ever being confronted on these issues that directly implicate the taxpayer, our taxpayer dollars,
We're done with
the
this.
decisions being made in our name with our money. It was beautiful to see Crystal fucking confront.
You have to be able to answer those hard
Alyssa
questions,
Slotkin
or
in
you
that
don't
way.
deserve
Just like it's
to
beautiful
be
to see
in
Jennifer
Congress
Welch when she has
or
the
part of
opportunity and
government.
actually uses the opportunity to confront some Zionist ghoul like Cory Booker. Yeah, they should have to fucking answer for it. And if you agree with their
fucking
stance,
answer.
Destiny, then why weren't they able to better defend it? They're a professional fucking adult person.
If you think
they need to be
ACAP money's
coddled?
so great
You think
for
they
you,
shouldn't
prove it to
be
us.
able to answer
Tell us
questions off the
why.
cuff, even if they're not told in advance that the
Stand
question
on
is
it.
coming?
It's so great.
That's not how
Stand on
journalism
it.
works. When you're a journalist, you don't send the questions to the person you're interviewing before you interview them. That's literally
called
the
gotcha
opposite of
journalism.
fucking journalism. That's like what happened in 2016 when they gave the debate questions to Hillary Clinton. You think that's how it should work?
No.
Carlson was on Fox, I guess, so he must be cool. Meanwhile, Tucker Cruz just came back from Moscow showing how amazing it is that they have bread in their grocery stores. Like,
Right.
Jesus Christ. But those, like, they're so openly hostile. And when you have people who weren't even supporting Kamala for president, like, I'm sorry, but regardless of your political beliefs, this was the easiest GED level question of, like, support Kamala or Trump, even if you cared about Israel.
Again, all those people supported Kamala, except for, to be fair, Cenk and Anna. I don't think that, or at least Anna. Cenk did repeatedly express that he was going to vote for Kamala Harris, but Anna was the one that was like, I'm fucking done with the Democratic Party. Fuck all the Democrats. They're all the same as Republicans. Maybe Trump is actually based and all that kind of shit. But literally, other than Anna Kasparian, everyone he mentioned openly and explicitly and honestly aggressively supported Kamala Harris, specifically Kyle.
Yeah, in the Majority Report? Are you kidding me? They were, I mean, they were all in for Kamala Harris. We all were all in for Kamala Harris. The reality is we made that simple calculation that Destiny has to pretend the left did not do, because otherwise he would have to be able to grapple with the argument that, hey, yes, while we did support Kamala Harris, we understand that it was insufficient to win, and we need to have better politics if we're going to be able to confront the Republican Party head on and not lose.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I just can't believe that Tim Miller didn't push back on that at all. He's just like basically agrees to Destiny's framing of the situation that progressive pundits are like too hostile to the Democrats.
And Gaza is a single issue. Kamala would have been dramatically better. Biden was dramatically better than Trump on the Gaza issue. Iran attacked Israel. We didn't go to war with Iran when Biden was president. The inability to support the candidate, we've played this game over and over and over again, where they don't get their Bernie Sanders, they don't get their ultra progressive candidate, and then they're like, oh, whatever. Or it'll be like the weakest, the most tepid kind of, well, I don't think you should vote for Trump, and I'm not going to tell you who to vote for kind of thing. That's unacceptable in my eyes. Yeah. And when you're courting those people and you're trying to make overtures to those people, I think you're trying to court, one, a base that you'll never truly gather, because the extremism they want is so far away from what you can do. And then two, in trying to court those voters, you're going to have to move to such extreme positions. You're going to lose more. And all the polling, at least that I've seen, is that Democrats generally want people who are more moderate in views. Yeah.
Well, and this is why, and again, this comes back to why
That's actually not true, by the way. Can we pause it really quickly? That's why the Democratic Party's approval rating is always even slightly below Donald Trump. Like, you'll look at Donald Trump's approval rating, and then the Conservative Party will be able to tweet out, like, the overall approval rating of the Democrats is even less than that, because they're feckless losers who don't want to stand up to Donald Trump. And that's why people like Kyle criticize them. That's why people like Crystal Ball criticize them. It's not because they like the Republicans. It's because they're pissed off that Chuck Schumer can't actually confront the Republicans, that he can't tackle the issue head on, that he doesn't want to fight them, that he's going to roll over and he's going to fund ice, that he's not going to be able to draw a line in the sand and say, fuck you, we're coming after you for the Epstein files. Fuck you and your war with Iran. We're going to oppose it with everything we've got. Hakeem Jeffries doesn't have it in him to have an actual backbone. Why? Because they're bought by the same establishment that buys the Republican Party. It's all about dollars and Wall Street and the military industrial complex and AIPAC and all of that shit. And that's why the most popular politicians in America are across the board the ones that don't take AIPAC money, the ones who don't take corporate cash. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Zohran Mamdani. And to be fair, what's this fuck from Kentucky that's doing the Epstein files all the time? Thomas Massie is actually pretty popular in his approval rating. Why? Because people don't feel like he's sold out to another government. Right now, as soon as you realize how much Thomas Massie hates poor people in this country, then you're going to start to change your mind on them if you're one of the people who feels warmly towards him. But the point still stands that if you don't take AIPAC money, when you actually do show up and represent the American people, when you can tell the truth about
Massey's
Gaza,
still a piece of shit.
You're rewarded for it in the approval rating. But because the Democratic leadership can't do that, they're punished.
He gets a W for that.
100%. Let's hear some more of this absolute fucking idiocy.
What's on right now was why I was so. This little kerfuffle in the discourse about Hassan right now was why I was so adamant about how dumb it is to fight. Like the third way types are fighting them on their strongest turf. the far left, like that crew, right? Like, honestly, I mean, what the Democrat, and this is my frustration with those guys on the left, is like, since Kamala lost and Hillary lost, anytime in the discourse now, it's like, well, we can't run any centrists anymore because they don't know how to win. And it's like, what have you guys won? Like, you guys haven't won anything. Like, you haven't won a single swing state once. Like, yeah, try to win something somewhere that's not a blue state, and then
They just got Zohran.
First of all, if the fucking DNC hadn't squashed Bernie's campaign, Trump would never have been elected.
Exactly.
That's the Democratic Party's fault, not Bernie's. But either way.
Listen, what I think, my personal opinion, nobody has ever tried this. Dan Osborne is kind of trying it in Nebraska right now, in a little bit of an imperfect way. What I really think makes sense for Democrats is,
I like how his one example of what a Democrat should do is a guy who's explicitly not running as a Democrat. The guy is literally running as an independent. If you're not familiar with Dan Osborne, he's not a Democrat at all. And he's like, oh, the Democrats should run so far towards the center that they're not even Democrats anymore, but don't criticize the Democratic Party. I think that's just weird.
Yeah.
To move to the left on foreign policy, because that's where the country is, move to the left on some economic stuff, probably more left than I would like on healthcare or whatever, but I can read polls, and then cut to the right on cultural stuff, right? Like, most people in Nebraska are against the war, want healthcare, but also like cops and aren't into woke speak about.
And I would say, what about Graham Plattner? What about Graham Plattner? Graham Plattner doesn't throw trans people under the bus. Hell, James Talarico doesn't even throw trans people under the bus. And they both are doing fantastic. They're both on fire right now. What is with this bullshit that, oh, actually American people, they just want a culturally right-wing candidate? Like, no, actually they don't. They want a candidate who is confident in their ideology and who doesn't just, go where the winds are blowing or go with some stupid bullshit poll tested strategy where, oh, look at this poll. It says that the majority of Americans don't support trans people in sports. Therefore, you have to pander to Republicans. No, that doesn't fucking work. Look at Colin Allred's campaign. He did exactly that and miserably fucking failed. Meanwhile, look at a guy like Graham Plattner. He gives an excellent answer defending trans people's right to exist in society. And he's being rewarded by the voters. Now, obviously, we'll have to see if he wins the general election, but I think he's very well positioned to do so. Again, even with his far left cultural stances, he never backs down from that shit. I have yet to see Graham Plattner pander to Republicans in the way that one of these idiots like Colin Allred did when it comes to something like trans people.
He gave a trans woman a big hug on the debate stage and said, "I'm sorry that I was that I had the opinions that I had in the past. I've changed." Like it was incredible. It was beautiful. It was exactly
I'll take it.
The kind of thing that we would ask for from politicians.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and again, it's just such a tired fucking. And I'm not saying we should like the Democrats should nominate some just like total fucking SJW whose like main talking points are based around identity politics. That's not what I'm saying.
No.
But there's a way to thread that needle, again, like Graham Plattner does, without just throwing marginalized communities under the bus, without just pandering to Republicans. And I think that's pretty obvious. It's pretty weird to see Tim Miller continue to espouse that stupid line of bullshit when there's really no evidence for it.
No. Campus stuff and also don't want a reasonable immigration policy. Like that would be a great compilation of issues. And my frustration with the left is that never happens, right? They're all it's always, it has to be, if you're 1 inch to their center, you're an enemy. And that part is crazy. And I think that is why I was saying that was kind of encouraging about Zoran, that he ended up not being like that. He's ended up being much more pragmatic than his most annoying fans. And I think that's good. And I think that if we could...
Zoran is like the archetypal socialist. Everything that I believe in politically, I feel like was embodied by the Zoran campaign. I mean, Zoran is to his core a DSA socialist, right?
I mean,
he led a hunger strike to get the
They're just telling us that they don't think we're as scary as they thought we were.
To get a ceasefire for Palestine. Like he never once threw trans people under the bus. He always continued to pivot the conversation back towards affordability for New Yorkers, but he did it without ever casting mud on any kind of a social issue, which is exactly what Tim Miller just said we should do, run to the right on social issues. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You want a guy that's popular and is like Zoran, it's because Zoran understands what Bernie Sanders understood, which is that you can't throw these people under the fucking bus, but you can win the majority of the people over by centering affordability, by centering the fact that if I am elected to represent you, I'm going to make your life easier. Crazy to pretend that Zoran's the embodiment of running to the center on social issues. Like that's the first guy you can think of, because you have no example of anybody who would actually run with your politics. Your politics would quickly devolve into just taking a bunch of fucking corporate money.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I mean, Zoran, he like apologized to the fucking pigs or whatever. That's probably what he's referencing. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
He was like, the cops aren't racist or whatever. but in every other, it's not like, you can't say that Zoran cut to the right on social issues. That's just inaccurate. To say, oh yeah, Zoran's a great example of a guy who is left wing with economics, but cut to the right on cultural issues. No, that's not Zoran. Again, just because he apologized to the stupid pigs, it's not like he's out here throwing trans people under the bus or advocating for like a fucking fascist immigration policy or whatever the hell you're suggesting Democrats embrace. Like Kamala Harris tried to and failed miserably.
Encourage there to be other lefty candidates to do stuff like that. I think that would be a net plus. Maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know, but I think that engagement is worthwhile on that point. But also, like, calling them out when they're doing stuff that is damaging is also good. I think not just in the way that we were talking about, circling back to the original conversation, not about how the left concedes to MAGA a lot. I definitely don't think the central left should concede to the far left on electability. And you are seeing some of that out there. And,
For sure.
And so a part of the way to do that is to win and show you know how to win and to be pragmatic and practical as well.
Again, if fucking Bernie had the nomination, if it wasn't rigged against him by corporate Democrats and fucking Hillary Clinton, we never even would be in this nightmare. There never would have been a Donald Trump presidency. We'd be living in a fucking socialist paradise. No, I'm just kidding. But still, we wouldn't even be having these stupid conversations if it weren't for the fucking establishment of the Democratic Party rigging the fucking election against the left wing, and in the process demoralizing mass factions of the youth and of the progressives who, yeah, obviously that's going to make it harder for the left to win in the future, in addition to the massive fucking financial disadvantage that leftists constantly find themselves up against because of their principled stance against big money in politics. Yeah, let's completely ignore that and talk about electability and how the center left should never concede the electability issue to the candidates that they rig the process against. It's such bullshit. And again, Tim Miller's not the worst of the worst. Like, I think he makes some pretty good points sometimes. I've watched Bulwark segments and found them to be totally reasonable. I'm not saying he's like some total fucking ghoul or whatever. But I was super disappointed to see him not only platform Destiny, but not even push back at all.
He's more of a ghoul now.
Against the stupid bullshit about how, oh yeah, can you believe these fucking populists are taking control and just all this crap coming out of Destiny's mouth, because again, he's bitter and fucking irrelevant, and no one wants to hear his stupid pro-genocide Zionist garbage anymore.
Totally. And honestly, if you go to Destiny's Twitter, you can see he's really going Ethan decline. He's really crashing out. One thing that you could tell, Ethan stopped getting any views when he wasn't talking about Hassan Piker anymore, right? So all of his content became about Hassan. If you look at Destiny, it's always either Hassan right here. It's, Ryan Grimm has been beefing with constantly, and the people at Breaking Points. It's Kyle Kalinske, and it's just nonstop all the fucking time.
He's constantly, amplifying these Zionist smears, specifically of Hassan.
Yep. And it's all he has left. It's literally all he has left. So I think that, the fact that he has to go and slum it with a guy who used to be a Republican and now is, I'm flirting with the left wing to bash other left wingers. I mean, it's just, again, it's a sign of his decline. And Tim Miller, just the other day, he was taking a shot at Kyle, I believe, and agreeing with Michael Tracy. And Michael Tracy's like, minimalist view of the Epstein files. So we reacted to that the other day. I mean, he is, at the end of the day, still a Republican. And those aren't the kind of people that I'm trying to win over, right? The Republican Party doesn't reflect my politics. So if people from the Republican Party want to come over to the left, that's great. I'll take Tim Miller where we agree. He says he's willing to move to the left on healthcare. If that's Medicare for all, I'd love to see him support that. If it's the Green New Deal, love to see him support that, right? If it's talking about how we need to raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour, I would love to see him support that. If he thinks Donald Trump needs to be 25th Amendmented, I would love to have him speaking out on that. But I'm not going to move to the center to appeal to him. I am going to appeal to the masses by standing up for the working class, like Zohran Mamdani has, and watch people like Tim Miller come over from that way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Either way, I don't have much else to say on that front.
Yeah, I think we about covered it.
Tim Miller is someone
shout
I
out to
could
Kyle
get to
for
be
being
a
based, and fuck Destiny for being washed.
Yeah, Destiny's so fucking washed. She's completely fucking irrelevant. His whole contrarian shtick doesn't really work anymore, nor does his debate bro shtick, because no one really wants to fucking engage with him other than Tim Miller for some reason. Like, when was the last time you even remember seeing Destiny debate somebody? It seems like that was his whole shtick for a while, and then his whole shtick became like doing 8-hour-long streams about his like divorce with his fucking ex-wife.
So this weekend, Kanye West or Ye or Yeezus or I don't know, Nazi guy, because I'm calling him Nazi guy. Man who for the last 2 years has been, maybe more, has been doing a sharp descent into Nazism. It started with some merch that was like, it's okay to be white. Like a lot, which is sort of a Nazi like slogan. It's okay to be white, because apparently it's not somehow in their minds. He and Candace Owens got together. He and Nick Fuentes, were homies.
Whoa.
He I can't remember. He did meet at he met Trump at Trump Tower. I don't think he was at the Mar-a-Lago dinner, but correct me, Chad, if I'm wrong about this. And, in the last 6 months, it's gotten precipitously worse. He released a song called Heil Hitler, which the best part about that song is the chorus goes, my N-word Heil Hitler, my N-word Heil, and just like, it's just, I don't know. I feel bad for Adolf, you know what I mean? I feel a little bit bad, But anyway, the point is that he was like renting out warehouses in Hollywood and hiring a bunch of actors and singers to sing Heil Hitler and like do all these weird Nazi chants. And he's gone off the deep end. And over the weekend, he straight up sold out SoFi Stadium twice, $33 million. And because 2 months combined, I think.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe it's one of the, and like in the early months of the year, he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I've been having a mental health episode."
Okay, he goes in and out of those.
I'm neurodivergent. I'm Nazi divergent. So he goes in and out of this. Number one, who the fuck are the rubes who are buying tickets to see him live? Still. And then number two, like, how is it SoFi? Like, yeah, no, that's good. No, that's fine. Across town, there's a warehouse with a bunch of people shouting Heil Hitler, but please come. And, heaven forbid that person said free Palestine. Then of course they would never be allowed anywhere here. But this is the kind of where you realize like men can get away with anything. And sort of relatedly, and in the comedy world, Louis C.K. is headlining the Netflix is a Joke festival.
Bro, I was a racist last week and for a month. Now I feel better. My mental health episode is gone. Yeah. I know the most forgettable president ever, right?
At the Hollywood Bowl.
At the Hollywood Bowl, and I'm like, I don't look. Louis can come back. He's come back.
He came back a while ago.
Back a long time ago.
See, that
guy was
shot.
And he's been loyally followed. Like Kanye sold out SoFi twice. Louis always sells out as well.
Absolutely.
I can get 20 people maybe sometimes in Kansas City.
That's bullshit.
I'm high, and that's probably the reason why.
No, and it's like, it's one thing. Look, it's fine. Like, I think, no charges had been pressed against Louis, that I know of. Maybe they should have been, honestly. But like, it's okay. He can come back and release his own self-album. But the fact that Netflix was like, no, you know what? We need a headliner in the year 2026 of Louis C.K., someone who was like, relevant 15 years ago peaked. Like, come on now. Like, this is your headliner. It's just so
This is why I hate Netflix. I fucking hate Netflix. They and this is basically capitalism, right? As well.
Yes. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, I don't hate Netflix, but I get his point. He wants to go to the DVD store and go in the back room where it says 18 plus. Right? He doesn't want to mess around with Pornhub. I know these guys.
Meaning, like, so what
He's
that
funny,
this
though.
guy did X, Y, and Z. This also happens in sports, where some guy will get a domestic abuse thing, and he'll be back soon after because he's really good on the playing field.
Right.
Right.
And Louis funny, and Louis got
Gives you
this
a pass.
big following. So Netflix just wants, the notoriety.
Take a little break.
They want the
It's
money. And the
fine.
same thing with Chappelle. That's why they were like, you want to do 5 anti-trans specials? Please go
fine.
ahead.
Give us some more anti-trans shit.
Not everything was anti-trans, but
But it doesn't matter. The surrounding jokes were shit too. He's lost his touch.
every special had like a
Lead
moment of just, in my
got to his
opinion,
brain.
egregious anti-trans hate.
Wow.
But
And he covered it with saying, I'm best friends with the trans person.
yeah, who then she later commits suicide because of negative comments. Don't even get me started, Eddie. This makes me so mad. But
Well, it's very confusing too for me because I grew up and Louis too. These guys, Chappelle
good.
and Louis, were so funny, so polished. Like on stage, just amazing. Maybe even 1 and 2 as far as stand-ups go in my. And so and then they get and then they do
in my
this
top 5
bullshit
year,
stuff
that
like
era.
Louis jerking off in front of people without their consent or
without
with
their,
consent.
well, his thing was asking, like, can I? and didn't matter the answer, he would do it.
He would.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And it was an open secret. Everyone knew. Everyone in comedy knew. And the women who eventually spoke out about it, their careers were ruined.
Can I give this a bigger context? The bigger context is we live in such a lawless world now. Gaza was the end of international law.
I like that you're couching the Louis stuff in the international law of Gaza. I like keep going.
Mr. CK, no. No, what I'm saying is that morality
Thanks for
and
spreading your
what is
wisdom, Matt.
right
Appreciate
and what
you.
is wrong now, because of like just the amazing horrific things that corporate money does
yes
to everyone and to the environment. And guys like Louis and Dave, it's like, what is right anymore when this world is just being taken apart by the tyrants and the violent people?
Well, I mean, I will say the difference between those two. One is kind of open with his opinion. It's like one is he's couching it in his jokes. Dave Chappelle doesn't have, the allegations actually harming people, ruining their careers and whatnot, whereas Louis does. But I do think that should be his opener of Louis being like, hey, look, now that we're in nuclear war, what I did looks pretty good. Like, not a big. He was my favorite Louis little stat. He was in Kyiv the night that the Ukrainian war started, that Russia started bombing and had to shelter. And
is that right?
Yes, and I think perhaps his headlining act at the Hollywood Bowl will mark the start of Iran finally coming to mainland.
When is he headlining?
I think it's the end of the month.
Okay.
But
Nice
just
joke.
for some comparison before we move on, like, Kathy Griffin, she posted a photo of her with a bloody head of Trump when Trump was elected, and quite literally nobody booked her for 10 years. Like, she is currently on her first stand-up tour, and she was doing, TV appearances, and yes, was less of a touring comic, but like, she's now just doing, it's all self-funded, it's all herself, because she was so toxic. And like, I was pitching a show around town right after Trump was elected, and you know how executives are.
The first time?
It was
the first time he was elected?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was the first time pitching a show, and actually the first time he was elected, and it was effectively like it was like jackass for journalism. Like, what if stunts, but also journalism? So you're trying to like ask people tough questions, but sort of making it stunty and things like this. And it was really fun. And all the executives were just
I like it.
It's a little bit mean-spirited, and now that Trump's been elected, and there's a lot of Americans who love him, and we're just wondering if, is there a way? We want things that meet in the middle, and we don't want to alienate people. And this is, Hollywood is sort of fundamentally a conservative place, of course, and in every single way, in every show and every special that actually makes it, you realize the backstory is it nearly didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, someone had to fight for it like crazy.
Big time.
Right.
Yeah.
Big time. And that's interesting that you say Hollywood is fundamentally conservative, because to the middle of the country, this is like a hotbed.
Right, because they're gay people.
Liberalism.
It's like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now.
No,
Hit
because
that
you have
button.
to look at the output, not the people making it. Whether they're gay or not doesn't mean they're going
Whether
to
it
be
was
not
the slave-owning
conservative. What the
citizens
fuck?
of ancient Rome and Greece, the nobility of the feudal era, or the wealthy owners of capital under capitalism, whom the second kind of freedom seemed tailor-designed
Okay, here we
to
go.
benefit.
It's school time.
Further, the
Gonna finish
business owner
this.
became wealthy by capturing the
You can either watch this, the beginning of this, because it's so long, on my other VOD. I think it was 4 days ago. I'm going to finish it. Maybe it was last Friday.
profit of the business while paying their employees as little as possible given the job
Anyway,
market.
this is about Star Trek into socialism, or who deserves the future. I'm not sure I agree with this guy yet. but he's definitely describing some things that, I talk about. So,
in other words, their freedom was supported by the labor of those beneath them, just as the freedom of the feudal lord was created by the labor of the peasants and serfs on their fiefs. What if there might be another way of doing things? What if the workers controlled the businesses themselves?
Right.
What if they held the land in common like their peasant ancestors had, rather than paying rent to some landlord? What might society look like then? This is a deceptively powerful notion. Imagine for a moment you have a business that creates widgets. An invention comes along that allows the business to make the same number of widgets in half the time. Under capitalism, the business owner or owners might then fire half the employees and thus be able to make the same revenue with half the labor costs. However, if the workers controlled the business, they might vote to keep the same number of employees at the same salary, but work half the number of hours.
Oh.
Thus, who controls the business determines if the workers have the power to choose between profit and freedom. Of course, this sort of business already exists. It's called a workers' co-op, and there's thousands of them all over the world,
Correct.
with the largest group of cooperatives being the Mondragon Corporation, a federation of cooperatives in Spain employing nearly 100,000 people. But Marx didn't just want cooperative businesses. He wanted a cooperative society. Inspired by the Paris Commune of 1871, he imagined, in the Civil War in France, published the same year, the whole of France as self-working and self-governing communes, using universal suffrage to elect representatives to a national council that would administer a few functions for general national purposes, including regulating national production upon a common plan. But Marx also warned against creating recipes for cookshops of the future. An egalitarian society should not be planned from on high by anyone, not even him. It should be self-organized from below by the people themselves.
Oh.
And contrary to his image as a revolutionary absolutist, Marx believed that some countries might be able to transition to this sort of communism peacefully through representative democracy once universal suffrage had been achieved. Communism in Marx refers simply to a situation where the means of production are owned communally by the people and run for the public benefit, rather than being owned by a handful of wealthy capitalists and run for the profit of their shareholders. Marx wanted to abolish, in other words, what he called private property, which is to say, ownership of land and businesses. This term has caused no end of confusion, though, since Marx distinguished private property from personal property, which is stuff like your toothbrush that no one wants to take away. In the popular imagination, of course, communism has come to mean something else entirely. The term has become synonymous with the Soviet system, especially as developed by General Secretary Joseph Stalin,
Which
a
was
centralized
failure.
and undemocratic bureaucracy supervising not only every aspect of the economy, but seeking to colonize as well the minds of its populace and purge out any dissenters as enemies of the people, in a way starkly similar to fascist dictator Benito Mussolini's conception of totalitarianism. This version of communism would be basically unrecognizable to Marx.
No.
Communism in Marx is global, stateless, classless, self-organizing, and fundamentally democratic. But in between capitalism and communism, you'd have what Marx called the dictatorship of the proletariat, which didn't mean a dictatorship in the modern sense, but simply a situation in which the workers would be in charge. Engels even said the dictatorship of the proletariat would take the form of a democratic republic. Following the First World War, revolution, and civil war that had laid waste to the former Russian Empire, Soviet founder Vladimir Lenin decided to shore up the economy by both allowing small business ventures again and by having his government take over or remain in control of major industries. But a situation where a few unelected private capitalists running businesses have been replaced by a few unelected bureaucrats isn't communism or even socialism. It's what Lenin himself called state capitalism. And it was supposed to be temporary as the Soviets worked towards global revolution until Stalin decided, against Marxist doctrine, that the Soviet Union could establish communism in one country and made state capitalism permanent. These decisions were not without critics on the left. For example, contemporary communist thinker Rosa Luxemburg wrote, "To be sure, every democratic institution has its faults and limitations, which it has in common with all human institutions. But the remedy discovered by Lenin and Trotsky, the abolition of democracy, is worse than the evil it is supposed to cure, for it shuts off the life spring from which can come the cure for all the inadequacies of social institutions.
You cannot have a...
Socialism was always supposed to be democratic.
Yeah,
After all, if the
socialism
workers
has to be
aren't in control
democratic.
of the means of production, you don't have socialism at all.
I agree.
Of course, capitalists are happy to point to this and call it evidence that socialism never works.
Yes.
But then, in the capitalist...
Many of my chatters have asked me this. That's why I'm watching this. Because this is the key point here. What they were calling communism wasn't really communism because it did not include democracy.
Mind,
Was not
the Stalinist system is the
democratic.
negation of capitalism's focus on the individual. And this negation of the individual has been dramatized in Star Trek in various ways, such as in the original series episode, The Return of the Archons,
I
where a
remember this one.
population lives under the absolute control of a fanatical computer.
Yep.
But the most full version of this is the Borg, cybernetic beings who spread peace and harmony through the universe by transforming all beings into mindless drones. Among the Borg, the Queen is the only one with anything resembling actual freedom, living the ultimate dream of the totalitarian dictator, where their subjects' thoughts themselves are merely an extension of the leader's will. Channeling this, a capitalist will take any loss of power to the state at all, even such innocuous
scene
things
was
as
insane,
universal health care or social security under a functioning democracy, as akin to Stalinism and essentially evil. The Ferengi want you to think there's no option between them and the Borg. However, there's a strange contradiction here, isn't there? As we've explored, capitalist corporations have a history of reducing their workers to as abject conditions as possible, whether that was literal slaves, indentured servants, debt peons, undocumented immigrants, or simply workers employed at far below a living wage. Open slavery still exists in America, after all, where convicted prisoners are forced to work for pennies or for nothing to make products for for-profit businesses.
Yep.
But this is part and parcel with the fact that capitalist corporations are themselves not democracies, that their CEOs and boards of directors have the same sort of absolute power reserved in the political world for dictators and oligarchs. Neoliberal politicians insist they want small government, and yet always seem to provide massive subsidies to private corporations when in power, shifting our tax money into capitalist hands. But the truth is, of course, whatever so-called anarcho-capitalists tell you, there is no capitalism without the government. Capitalism depends on contracts, on binding agreements between employer and employed, and between different businesses to coordinate production and distribution. As the Grand Negus himself once said,
"Contracts are the very basis of our society."
And a contract is only as good as the legal system in place to enforce it. The government is the entity that grants charters of incorporation and creates the conditions, the rules, in which those corporations can operate. And thus, every capitalist owes their winnings ultimately to the state and the system it governs, which permits them to control production and capture profits. This is why the anarcho-capitalist fever dream of corporations without government oversight would always devolve into feudal-esque warlordism, where power would accrue to whoever had the most powerful private security, much as political power on a national scale often goes to whoever has the most powerful army, whether or not their claims are legal, just, or ethical.
Correct.
But then neoliberals don't actually want to eliminate the government. What they want to eliminate is any sort of commons and public welfare. Anything that privileges the weak or the poor.
They're talking about that.
Anything that prevents them from taking as much money and power as they can while feeling justified that they deserve it. Confusing privilege combined with rapacious, immoral greed and ambition for intelligence, worthiness, and merit. Meanwhile, they'll preach an almost religious faith in the free market to solve every possible problem and benefit everyone, while reality demonstrates the irrationality and moral bankruptcy of this position every time someone dies because they can't afford insulin. In reality, The notion that socialism never works is contrary not only to the reality of the Paris Commune of 1871 or similar experiments like the anarchist communes of revolutionary Spain or the Ukrainian Makhnovshina, which were all destroyed from the outside by authoritarians, or modern ongoing situations like the Zapatista autonomous municipalities in Mexico or Rojava in northern Syria, not to mention various smaller communes around the world. But as Marx himself pointed out, and is illustrated by the aforementioned destructions, this kind of pure egalitarian society is difficult to maintain in the midst of global capitalism, which is why he believed communism was only possible if it spread globally. However, that doesn't mean that socialist ideas haven't accomplished great things. During the deprivations of the Great Depression, membership in socialist and communist organizations soared. Franklin Roosevelt was no socialist, but under the pressure of Union, socialist, and communist power and the threat of mass action, he adopted 90% of the platform of Norman Thomas, the Socialist Party presidential candidate. Unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, the abolition of child labor, Social Security, the 8-hour workday, though Thomas originally wanted 6 hours, and 5-day work week, and minimum wages were all socialist ideas before they became mainstream.
Yes.
And we now have these things we take for granted thanks to the long efforts of socialist agitation, organization, and activism.
Is correct.
And every one of them were at the time opposed by right-wing businessmen crying socialist like a curse and promising they would ruin the economy and country and undermine our values of freedom. It's worth noting that Roosevelt's New Deal specifically carved out exceptions to workers' rights in industries where workers were predominantly black in order to get the backing of Southern Democrats. He also implemented British economist John Maynard Keynes' ideas about using direct management of the economy in order to avoid the cyclical recessions that had plagued the 19th century.
Yeah.
The result, for America and most of the post-World War II West, was what's now known as the Social Democratic Compromise, or the Long Boom, a period lasting until the mid-1970s of untrammeled growth, economic stability, and prosperity, and a burgeoning middle class mostly free from the levels of abject inequality that marked the Gilded Age, at least for white people. And this is also, perhaps not coincidentally, the period that gave birth to Star Trek itself, a period where democratic socialist forefather Edward Bernstein's vision of socialism growing gradually within capitalism as capitalism had grown within feudalism might be working. Somewhat ironically, the same capitalist types who protested every one of these programs as socialism will turn around when we say this is evidence that socialism works to lecture us that this isn't socialism at all.
No,
but
that's
it is
socialism.
what Keynes referred to as a kind of semi-socialism.
Oh my God.
Private property, which remember only refers to business and land, has obviously not been abolished, but large swaths of the economy and land have been brought under the regulation or proprietorship of the state, which, at least ostensibly, is managed democratically by the people. Here in America, roads, parks, beaches, all sorts of forests and natural spaces, government buildings, and so on are all publicly owned, as is lots of public housing. And the government runs all sorts of businesses and business-like services like the post office, libraries, public transit, schools, and so on, not to mention law enforcement and the penal system. Hundreds of municipalities run their own broadband internet access for their citizens.
Yep.
And the people in these municipalities are consistently the only Americans who express satisfaction with their ISPs.
Yep.
Other countries have gone considerably farther than the United States, of course. In the UK, all hospitals are owned by the government and doctors and nurses are public employees, working for organizations whose remit isn't profit but public welfare.
That's crazy.
The entire oil industry in Norway is owned and run by the government. In Vienna and Singapore, most people live in public housing, and because it's properly funded and managed, the people love it, and the fees they pay are far lower than rent would be on the open market.
Dude.
And far from destroying society, these publicly run endeavors have often worked demonstrably better than private alternatives. Almost everyone already agrees that some things should be provided to the public at no or low cost. The socialists suggest that maybe, just maybe, we could do more things this way. There are disagreements about how much should be controlled by the state or devolved into communities or independent cooperative businesses and family operations. Maybe some housing could operate the way Co-op City does in the Bronx, a privately owned housing development where the bylaws have strict rules about how much you're allowed to sell your apartment for, with a large portion of the sale profits going back to the co-op itself. There's options. But the point is that the system where one person can control huge chunks of the economy and personally reap the greatest rewards from it is fundamentally unjust. And here's the real kicker about private property in the Marxian sense. While today, 65.8% of Americans own a home or live in a home owned by their family, home ownership rates for people under 34 is only 34%, falling 10% between 1960 and today as housing costs skyrocket and large firms buy up housing to transform into rentals. Rentals they can then afford to warehouse to artificially drive up rental prices.
Right.
The idea that housing should be an investment is one in which homeowners pursue policies that limit housing developments and affordable housing initiatives to protect their property values, and landlords vie to create conditions where they can charge ever higher rents. And so housing inevitably grows out of reach for first-time buyers who must give ever more of their earnings to landlords as passive income. Meanwhile, only 8.9% of Americans can be described as a business owner. 10% of Americans own 89% of the stock market, and a lot of the rest is in retirement accounts and pensions controlled by a relatively
10%.
small number of fund managers. And only about 7% of Americans are landlords. The vast majority of Americans make the bulk of their income from wage labor, not capital ownership. In other words, not that many people in America actually own private property other than their own home. The economy of our free market is actually controlled by a tiny number of wealthy actors, and yet millions of Americans fight like mad for the right to keep it that way. In some ways, it's reminiscent of how in the antebellum South, millions of whites were willing to fight to the death for slavery, despite less than 5% of Southern whites actually owning any slaves, and only 1% owning large plantations. Anyone can start a business, certainly, but everyone can't. In a capitalist system, someone's always left flipping burgers for peanuts or making your paper towels in prison, and in fact, if someone doesn't want to do this, capitalists throw up their hands and exclaim, "No one wants to work anymore."
Right.
Is there private property in Star Trek? At first glance, the answer is obviously yes. Captain Picard's family, after all, owns a vineyard in France. Captain Sisko's father runs a restaurant in New Orleans. And other similar examples can be found. And yet, what's interesting is that because all the action takes place in the quasi-militaristic Starfleet, Roddenberry always compared it to the Coast Guard rather than the Navy.
Right.
The stories of Star Trek mostly take place without private property, at least for Federation members. The Enterprise itself is the property of Starfleet on a mission of exploration, not profit.
Right.
Thus, the cast all live and work in a publicly owned environment, eating together in a mess hall, socializing in 10 forward, and sharing recreational facilities like the holodeck.
Correct.
Which means that while the Federation itself might have private property, though no money, so how private property is managed is unclear, Star Trek as a narrative vehicle is one that operates almost entirely in the realm of public property. Though to be fair, the highly hierarchical organization of Starfleet is still not exactly a socialist ideal either.
No.
I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Bailey, when this becomes a democracy.
Anti-socialist forces were hardly dormant during the long boom. With the Cold War as cover, the right were able to destroy communist and socialist groups, and the breaking of union power came soon after, aided by increasing automation and outsourcing that began to decimate the American middle class's industrial base. In short, they rid themselves of the loci of worker power that had forced concessions on the ruling class in the first place.
Yep.
Then, when the oil crisis of the 1970s caused the economy to falter, they struck, bringing back the liberalism of the pre-war era as neoliberalism.
Government is not the solution to our problem.
This was it. This is why everyone goes, Reagan started it all.
Government is the problem.
Over the past 40 years, the gains of the social democratic period have been steadily winnowed away, Progressive taxation, which was intended to ensure those who made more money paid a higher percentage of taxes, has been hilariously inverted so that billionaires pay a lower tax rate than their secretaries. So that now, the middle class actually have the highest tax burden. Minimum wage, which was intended to ensure that anyone who worked 40 hours a week stayed above poverty level, hasn't increased since 2007. Social Security, which likewise was intended to be a living wage, is now a shadow of that. Medicare and Medicaid are both steadily being privatized through plans like Medicare Advantage, which scams both enrollees and taxpayers. Biden, meanwhile, has continued a further privatization of Medicare pilot started by the Trump administration. Another Democratic president replaced welfare for the poor with workfare and slashed its payouts. Republicans are even now proposing repealing child labor laws, and so on, as regulations and so-called entitlements that were so hard-won have been peeled back. And rich plutocrats constantly scheme about how they can get rid of all of these things, forming think tanks like the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, which spends fortunes to convince the media to convince us that Medicare and Social Security are insoluble and will create a deficit that will bankrupt us. Meanwhile, the same people who fund that foundation cheered when Trump massively cut all their taxes, causing the deficit to balloon to never-before-seen highs.
Yep.
Almost as if it was always a lie all along to benefit the rich and powerful at the expense of everyone else.
No shit.
Almost as if it was always a con. To justify their tax cuts, the rich will repeat the Ferengi-esque mantra that taxation is theft. But if you think taking some money from rich people and using it to feed the starving or give health care to the dying is morally wrong, then you value property rights over human rights.
Right.
Back in 1930, John Maynard Keynes had predicted that in the future, as productivity increased, we'd be working 4-hour days. Instead, as productivity has skyrocketed, hours have remained the same or even gotten worse, and wages went from matching productivity to stagnating, right as America's neoliberal turn took place. From there, all the extra revenue generated by that added productivity has been captured entirely by the 1%. This is what was stolen from us.
This is such a spot on.
Today, there are far.
Holy shit, this is so spot on. Well, I'm not saying much.
Far more empty houses than homeless people, and we have enough food for everyone, but people still starve. This is a moral calamity that we refuse to even admit to, and contrary to capitalist predictions, the last 40 years of neoliberal deregulation and tax cuts has only made the poor poorer and the middle class smaller. Today, 64% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and 63% of Americans don't have enough savings to cover a $500 emergency. America is now the only developed country where people go bankrupt from medical expenses, where people literally die because they can't afford insulin. At the same time, 2021 was the most profitable year for American corporations since 1950, and during the pandemic, American billionaires got 62% richer. CEOs of large corporations now make a record 399 times the pay of their average workers, while 48% of workers in the U.S. make less than $31,000 a year. We find ourselves, once again, in a time of record inflation, with wages not rising nearly as fast as the cost of goods, so that working people find themselves with the equivalent of constant wage reductions. And the neoliberal plan to battle this is a Reagan-style Volcker shock, where interest rates get raised in hopes of crippling the economy and preventing wage increases. After all, nothing reduces workers' bargaining power like mass unemployment. They've even advised companies not to raise worker wages in the face of crushing cost of living increases. This is their best plan. And yet, while politicians and pundits blame inflation on stimulus money that actually helped workers, or supply chain issues, or the war in Ukraine, corporations rake in record profits, proving that underlying conditions are not the primary cause at all, but corporate greed and opportunism. As Bernie Sanders pointed out, if the oil price per barrel today is the same as it was in 2010, and yet gas is selling $1 more per gallon, that price isn't the result of underlying conditions. There's a reason Shell Oil reported more than double profits in the third quarter last year as in the same quarter the year before. Corporate profits reached an all-time high of $2.5 trillion last year, while real wages declined more than 8.5%. Capitalism has
Ilhan
never
Omar,
worked,
we were just watching her.
allowing
Like I
a few
said,
people
she's
to
legit.
own housing and charge however much rent they want for it, or to own a business and treat and pay their workers however they can get away with, is a disaster for human well-being. We can do better than Amazon warehouse workers peeing in bottles, suicide nets at Foxconn factories, and mentally ill people freezing to death on street corners. If an alien came down to Earth and you explained it to them, they could tell you how highly illogical this all is. In Star Trek's own diegetic history, the path to the end of capitalism begins when, following a cataclysmic Third World War and international governmental collapse, scrappy genius Zephyr Cochrane and his team create the Earth's first warp drive. This attracts the attention of the Vulcans, who come down and help usher in a new age. In real life, though, we can't rely on heroic leaders to save us any more
Vulcans. I
than
wish
we can
they'd come
rely
save
on
us.
benevolent aliens. Nor can we sit around waiting for an eschaton or collapse to fall upon us in hopes we'll survive long enough to build something better in the ruins. Of course, it's difficult to even imagine substantial change in the American government today due to its sheer dysfunction, undemocratic institutions, and corruption. The House of Representatives is undemocratic because of gerrymandering, the Senate is undemocratic by design, and the presidency is undemocratic thanks to the Electoral College. And that's not even mentioning intentional voter suppression and the ongoing campaign to take over and subvert the mechanisms of elections, which, contrary to the popular narrative, dates back long before Donald Trump's big lie. More importantly, our government is corrupt to its bones, thanks to the legalized bribery of campaign spending. How can we expect politicians to raise taxes on their own campaign donors, or to advocate for policies that disempower them? Hell, we even give rich people tax breaks to donate to the so-called think tanks that lobby for legislation that favors them, instead of their money actually going to the public good. Over half of the members of Congress are millionaires themselves.
Isn't that fucked up?
Should we be surprised
You guys
when they
know
look
that?
after their own class interests? Like, should we be surprised when Nancy Pelosi defends the practice of trading stocks whose value depends on her own policies, when this practice personally makes her millions?
Or Paul?
Further, democracy depends on freedom of the press. And yet, how free is our press if it's controlled by a small number of the ultra-rich as part of ever larger conglomerates, funded by advertising from other ever larger conglomerates? Is it a surprise we get pundit after pundit in the news media decrying even the backwards-looking proposals of Sanders and Warren as socialism, and therefore bad and wrong and evil? Is it really a surprise that an obvious fascist like Tucker Carlson gets a popular TV show while there isn't a single genuine leftist on television? This isn't a conspiracy. Media moguls aren't gathered in a room plotting to keep the working man down. It's a simple case of class interests and, as economists are fond of saying, incentives. Meanwhile, the right continues to laughably portray the mainstream media as left-wing by playing up their bigoted woke culture war bullshit. The result is what philosopher Antonio Gramsci called cultural hegemony, that renders any more egalitarian way of doing things not only evil, but unimaginable. Capitalism, despite being only a few hundred years old, is portrayed as a state of nature from which there is no alternative. Or, as my father used to paraphrase Winston Churchill, capitalism is the worst system except for all the other ones, which renders capitalism essentially beyond criticism.
Right.
Hence the expression, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Capitalist billionaires riding around in big dick rockets want you to think that they're the ticket to a Star Trek future, that they're going to invent it for us.
Yeah,
but the truth is that we could create the means to end scarcity tomorrow. We could just have Star Trek replicators come out of a lab somewhere, and those same billionaires would make sure we artificially limited and metered its output so they could extract profits from it. They're not creating the future, they're standing in its way. As I explored in my Loki episode, the same conditions that created socialist political change during the Great Depression also created the conditions for the rise of fascism.
Yep.
And the wealthy will invariably choose fascism over socialism because fascists will let them keep their private property. Anytime someone tells you the National Socialists were actually socialist, show them how they were bankrolled by the rich and powerful. And they'll tell us this is for our own good because it prevents mob rule, which is just a euphemism for poor people having opinions above their station.
Right.
And even that just scratches the surface of the ways the rich dictate policy.
Well put.
Like, did you know there was this DA in San Francisco whose policies worked against the interests of real estate developers? And those real estate developers and their finance chums spent $7 million on a successful smear campaign to have him recalled.
Yeah.
This despite his policies being shown to work and be popular? A study in 2014 confirms suspicion that economic elites and business interests have a massive effect on public policy, while the preferences of average citizens have little or no influence.
Oh shit.
But we don't need a study to see this when it's in front of our face.
Thank you.
A majority of Americans favor a wealth tax on the rich, Medicare for all, codifying Roe versus Wade, paid maternity leave, raising the minimum wage, government-funded childcare, free public college, and so on. And our enemies point to the dysfunction and corruption they themselves work to create and maintain, and tell us this is why government is bad, and we should just trust undemocratic corporations to govern themselves, while they happily hand out our money to those same corporations in the form of tax breaks, subsidies, and bailouts.
I'm gonna have to go.
But tell me again how capitalism benefits everyone. Of course, one wing of the socialist movement will tell us the solution, the only real solution, is violent revolution.
Oh, we're going to finish this, though.
It's easy to see the logic of their viewpoint, to conclude that if you're barreling toward a cliff and the bus driver won't listen to reason, you need to just lop off their head and take the wheel.
Right.
But even putting aside the danger of falling into an authoritarian trap a la Lenin, and putting aside the piles of dead innocents that every violent revolution in history has produced, to have a violent revolution, you need to have what Lenin himself called a revolutionary situation.
Yeah.
Russia, at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution, was beset by mass starvation, poverty, and warfare, and thus had a population desperate enough to risk death for the sake of change. At least, in most of the West, we're simply not there yet, and honestly, we wouldn't want to be if we have a choice. So let's instead look to options that don't require breaking out the guillotines. As we've seen in the example from Roosevelt and the New Deal, mass movement and organization can force changes in policy. There's evidence that merely getting 3.5% of the population to peacefully demonstrate can force political change. The constant cycles of economic crisis since the onset of neoliberalism have created an upsurge in interest in unions and socialist organizations not seen since the Depression. But what specifically
that sine
should
wave
we be
is about to
for?
go fucking
One
vibrate
obvious
time.
answer is to try and reclaim what we once had.
Holy shit,
to rebuild the protections and programs that existed before the neoliberal era. And that's what a lot of Democrats propose. It's even in the language that gets used, like the Green New Deal and Build Back Better. Even new programs like Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All is both the expansion of an earlier program and the realization of the universal health care that Franklin Roosevelt tried to establish back in the 30s, which would merely bring us up to parity with most of the rest of the developed world. There's an almost reactionary pining for a golden age of the past when you watch someone like Elizabeth Warren talk about everything the neoliberals have stripped away. They point with justification to the Scandinavian countries and their Nordic model that has given them the highest levels of happiness in the world. The rhetoric here is often that we need to rebuild the social democratic compromise so that we can save capitalism. The problem with the social democratic compromise is that by permitting capitalists to keep accruing as much power as they can, they'll inevitably turn and try to destroy the social democracy for their own gain, just as they've done since the dawning of the neoliberal era. Even in places like Sweden, capitalists have been stripping apart the hard-won social safety network for parts. And they use their capital to do it, withholding investments as a block via so-called capital strike in places like Sweden and France in order to force the governments to implement austerity and tax cuts. You haven't solved the problem, you've just kicked the can down the road. Given the magnitude of the issues we face and the ecological collapse on the horizon, it's clear we need change of a more fundamental nature, and we need it urgently. One option frequently bandied about is universal basic income. This idea has a lot to recommend it. Every person, regardless of income, would receive a flat payment from the government.
Sure, dude.
By making it universal and not means-based, you ensure there isn't a benefit cliff where someone starts making more money and actually loses money. Instead, you simply take back money from the wealthy through higher taxes. Also, because the middle class receives it rather than just the poor, it becomes much harder to take away later. If this payment were an actual living wage, you might have found the easiest way to Federation-style freedom. People could spend their lives doing the things that actually gave their lives meaning. And actually essential functions would get done because if they're actually essential, the jobs would pay enough to make it worth someone's while. Various real-life experiments have shown that UBI produce great results. However, it has fundamental problems, none of which are how would we pay for it when no one asks how we pay for ever-ballooning military spending increases and tax cuts for the rich. The corporate-controlled Congress could easily make the payment far less than a living wage and then use it as justification for cutting other social services that people might depend on to give more. In this scenario, it'd be easy for corporations to lobby for eliminating minimum wage and paying workers far less, resulting in greater profits for rich business owners, while, since the UBI wouldn't be enough to live off of, workers would still need to keep terrible jobs on threat of homelessness and starvation. In other words, rather than a support system for the people, it's simply become a gift to the payroll costs of employers, a mass subsidy for corporate capitalism and, given the current tax structure, one substantially paid for by the middle class. In fact, we can already see that happening with welfare programs here, where companies like Walmart intentionally pay employees too little to live on and then gives them instructions for applying for welfare. Who is this welfare meant to be actually benefiting exactly? And at worst, with UBI and welfare, you can end up with an underclass of people automated out of their jobs with no opportunities for anything better, living off a barely subsistent UBI, piled high in god-awful housing like something out of Ready Player One. Meanwhile, the rich would still be living high off the hog in a world built just for them while dismissing the unemployed as lazy.
Yeah, I know, right?
This is not
good old
socialism.
Reagan policy.
Which is to say that UBI and welfare more generally are good ideas worth doing, but still wildly insufficient on their own. For a different strategy, let's look at the most ambitious democratic socialist policy ever attempted. In the 70s, Sweden formulated something called the Meidner Plan for wage earner funds. Essentially, a percentage of profits from for-profit companies would be used to buy shares of public Swedish companies, with those shares being placed in funds controlled by unions. Thus, ultimately, the entire economy would transition to almost total worker ownership within a few decades.
Exactly. This is it.
Capitalists, to put it lightly, did not like this plan and used their considerable resources to organize the largest demonstration against it in Swedish history. By the time it had been implemented in 1984, the tax to fund it had been starkly reduced, and it had provisions to specifically weaken worker control. In 1991, the right wing took control of the government and ended the plan entirely, privatizing the funds. Sweden then followed Norway's lead into partially privatizing their pension funds. At first glance, this might seem like using the government's money to own segments of the private economy. But in practice, this is simply like the plans to privatize Social Security in the U.S.
It's bullshit.
A way of funneling tax money into the hands of private business owners while giving the people little say or interest in the actual management of the companies themselves. 401k plans were touted over pensions as giving average Americans a stake in the economy. But without a mechanism for collectively exercising any power over the corporations 401ks are invested in, all this amounted to was a giveaway of wage earner money to corporations, while employees lost the guaranteed pensions they once had in favor of plans that are chronically underfunded and insufficient. Other, less ambitious policies can increase cooperative ownership of businesses. For example, in 1985, Italy passed the Macora Law, which allows unemployed workers to get advances on unemployment benefits and pool them together with other workers to start worker cooperatives. This scheme so far has created 257 cooperatives involving 9,300 worker owners. In the U.S., Bernie Sanders recently got legislation passed to allow co-ops to receive SBA loans and funding nonprofits to aid and advise people on creating and managing co-ops. There's also been local efforts to support cooperatives. For example, many municipalities in California have enacted legislation to aid the creation of cooperatives and help employees purchase businesses from their employers.
Yeah.
But compared to the Maidner Plan, all of these are tiny, incremental drops in the bucket in the face of enormous multinational conglomerates that dominate the global economy for the sake of their billionaire masters. People often use the term radical these days as a way to write off someone's ideas. Anything radical implied to be not sensible or practical or valid. But sometimes radical change is called for. Sometimes it's necessary. To illustrate all of this, let's turn one final time to Star Trek and one of the best episodes they ever did about class inequality. In the Deep Space Nine episode Past Tense, members of the crew travel back to the mid-21st century, two of whom find themselves in a walled-off encampment for the homeless and unemployed amid rampant inequality. This encampment is in an area with apartments, so there's housing of a sort, but of course it's run down, unmaintained, and there's too little of it. There's food, but not enough, and it's spoiled and awful. In other words, this is the nightmare scenario of UBI, where the surplus poor are given just enough to be kept alive and tucked out of sight. When the people of the encampment rise up in a riot, Commander Sisko finds himself taking part in a hostage situation, demanding federal jobs and not handouts, like the Civil Works Administration of the New Deal, which funded infrastructure projects as a mass employment strategy.
What we want is to get out from behind these walls, to stop having to depend on handouts.
That's right.
Finally, Sisko engineers a way for the people of the encampment to tell their stories through the global network, beginning the process of America, quote,
finally begin correcting the social problems it had struggled with for over 100 years.
Without this incident, we discover, the Federation will not come to be. It's true that this story still has a focus on a heroic individual doing work to bring about change.
Yes.
And there's even an element where Dax must convince a wealthy businessman to help them get access to the network that will let them share their stories.
Right.
But the overall story is about the people engaging in mass action to take control of their lives. One might expect somebody in the story to be talking directly about capitalism, to be complaining about the corporations that dominate society and the rich in their penthouses while the ordinary people starve. But DS9 in 1995 can't be so direct without coming off preachy and overbearing, and without alienating much of an audience steeped in the cultural hegemony of neoliberal capitalism. But the show is still firmly on the side of the disenfranchised, of homeless, hostage-taking rioters in a way rarely seen on mainstream television then or now, especially considering how politically toothless modern Star Trek has generally become. This isn't some Marvel-style commentary where the villains have noble aims irredeemably marred by immoral means. In the story, even the wealthy are portrayed in a sympathetic light, which helps hammer home the idea that no one person is responsible for any of this. The problem is the system itself. And unless the system is changed, nothing will change. And it believes with all its blessedly optimistic Trekkie heart that this change is possible if only we work together to create it. We must continue focusing on organization, on building up unions, cooperatives, mutual aid groups, and actually left-wing political organizations. And we must use the power of those organizations to demand real substantive change in the structure of the economy through ideas like the Maidner Plan, as well as electoral reform to increase the democratic character of the state itself to make further change less difficult. And, as I've said, we must do all of this while being vigilant against the ever-present threat of an authoritarian seizure of power from the right, one currently being actively pursued with the steady takeover of electoral institutions.
And President
Fittingly,
Trump.
in contrast to the typical television format where the best lines are always given to the leads, the best line in past tense is said by one of the supporting characters, some common nobody who will never be seen on the show again. At one point, a hostage relates a story about a woman at the encampment she regrets she couldn't help more.
Oh.
Dr. Bashir tells her,
"It's not your fault that things are the way they are."
And she replies,
"Everybody tells themselves that. And nothing ever changes."
Let's see if maybe we can change things.
All right, good night, folks.